after one of the more ridiculous pre-show operations I can recall, we are in fact live at last. This is a first in late night grin history because on this evening, I think all four of us had our own delay, which is a new one even for us. But nonetheless, we're here, the final Grin Grappler of 2023, and it's a special one. The Von Erichs here as we gear up for the big Iron Claw release. I'm going to mention now that I'm actually not doing that as I have to wait another 2 months. I'm going to let everyone enjoy themselves for the rest of the night. Just want to make it clear that's the sacrifice that I'm taking part in here. Nonetheless, what a night it is. The Oracle of Wrestling, you were on time tonight.
How are you this evening, mate? I mean, I'm always on time.
You are
every time. Yeah. I'm never late.
Never.
And as I say that, I will have to leave briefly to go change my laundry. But
yes, you will.
And also cut my pizza up and bring it in here so I can gorge on it in front of everyone like I usually do. And always forget to put myself on mute so they can hear me chew. But
Plan the hits.
Bear with me tonight, folks. I'm getting over a cold here, so my voice is probably going to crack in and out. This is I will start this by saying I think this is the damnedest lineup we've had so far.
Yes,
and it's a wonderful way to end our second year of the Grin Grappler, which I cannot believe it is our second year of the Grin Grappler.
It's crazy.
I'm very excited for the 2024 Grin Grappler year ahead, and I'm very excited to go see the Iron Claw ASAP. Hopefully, sometime next week. I don't know if I'll be able to do it this weekend because holiday festivities, but looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to talking about the show tonight.
Absolutely, as you mentioned, it's quite the lineup. I'm going to give Alex a chance to kind of explain the process in that regard because it was a one-man show. Oracle, good luck in your adventure. Speaking of adventures, Bob.
Yep.
One of your more daring political statements this evening with the CM Punk show, and that covers some ground. How are you tonight, mate?
I don't even think it's noticeable that it's a CM Punk shirt without you pointing it out because, like, on the screen.
I disagree. You can see the blue. Alex, would you be on my side with this? You can see the Punk. You can see it there.
That's
well,
fair.
I thought, like I said, I thought it was the Yeet shirt for a second, which Bob in the Yeet shirt would be even funnier. But
Bob
okay,
is very,
there he is. When he chuckled and puffed out his chest, there you see the lightning bolt.
That's true.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, you are very punk rock, so it was kind of implied anyway, really. But
that's true.
Nonetheless, how are you, mate?
Doing well. A little worried about my internet, but we'll see how that goes at this point. And so far, so good. I mean, for now, since we've been on the actual air, so far, so good. But I'm doing well. Looking forward to seeing the Iron Claw, hopefully next week as well. I was gonna try and go Friday. Don't think it's gonna work out, but it's an exciting time, man.
It is. It's kind of surreal, honestly. I remember, especially our circle, our bubble, the way we responded to the early talk of the Von Erichs movie, and I remember reading a few years ago about like BBC Studios getting their hands on it and being like, "Well, that's gonna be wild." And then we had the moment where we realized who was going to be in the movie, and that was something in itself. And now here we are. It is pretty wild, legitimately. Alex, I get the sense, and again, we'll explain the layout and the selection in a moment, but I just get this sense that you're going to be steering the ship tonight an awful lot. This feels like a big one for you, brother. How you feeling?
Oh, I'll gladly steer the ship because y'all have bailed me out several times before. Well, first of all, we need to be clear. It's Maxwell Jacob Friedman presents the Iron Claw. That's
true.
The new updated title. I got my ticket for 7:00 on Thursday. I'm gonna go see it. I'm gonna wear my cowboy boots, my cowboy hat. It's gonna button-up flannel tucked into jeans. It's gonna be a whole. I'm gonna make Fritz proud. Yeah, and I don't have many things to be proud about being from Texas, but being able to steer a conversation on the Von Erichs is something that I'll take a little bit of pride in. So, as always, happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me again. Happy holidays to all. Merry Christmas to everybody out there. And I don't mean that in a political way. I just mean that I hope you and your family are well and are ready to eat some good food and relax in this upcoming week.
Now, you did mention here before we went live that you are yourself sporting an AEW shirt. Is that a political statement, or is that also an innocent gesture here for Christmas?
So last year when they did the holiday tour of Texas, they sold these fucking awesome shirts that have a wreath on it and a little longhorn up here, and it says the Lone Star State, and I think it says like the holiday tour down here at the bottom. There's no quicker way for you to get me to buy one of your T-shirts than for it to be specific to like a tour I catch you on or whatnot. There's a working plan to check out the New York promotions running a house show in Houston next week, and it's like part of their holiday tour. And I can already tell you if they have a holiday tour T-shirt, I'm going to be wearing it on the next Grin Grappler. So we'll see how this plays out.
Wonderful. So I look forward to then for.
You know who
for
the top
2024.
billed act for that show is currently on the Arena website?
Tell me how much. Oh, really? The big man, LA Knight. That's not an insult. That's just a fact of life. I love it. All right. Nonetheless, folks, enough of the small talk. We've got big business to handle. We've got, and this is a big statement because wrestling is packed with infamy and tragedy. But the Von Erichs may be the most infamous talent in wrestling history. Legitimately, maybe, right? It may be the one seed in that regard for a range of reasons, partly because the tragedy arrives with such triumph and it is such a wild swing. Even tonight's show, where we're covering a Fritz match, our year span is still just 13 years. And the last match is very much on, it's kind of on an island almost, it feels like, right? It just kind of captures how sudden and frantic a tale this is, and we'll try our best with our usual format to kind of shine a light on that.
You could go one step further and also just saying that, like, obviously pro wrestling is not a sport, but like it's one of the more tragic tales in the history of sports. Like,
Yeah.
have you heard of any family anywhere in the history of the world where 3 of the kids committed suicide and 2 of them died under suspicious means? That's like Macbeth level tragedy to begin with, and then
Well,
you know, we mix in the heights they reach that we're going to discuss. It's just it and that's, I think, with the movie coming out too, it doesn't seem like it should be real. Like there's just so many layers to the story.
yeah, and I think that's best captured by, this is the first time I can recall a biopic, a Hollywood movie, having to trim some of the tragedy. I mean, we're talking about usually, you have to kind of glorify these things, unfortunately, and make them more obscene than they were. In this case, they've had to actively cut back on what really happened. That really tells the tale better than we even could. But nonetheless, we always start by talking about like our own fandoms and such, and our own knowledge of these wrestlers. And this one I'm really intrigued by because I'm going to lead us here in just saying that, like, I'm very aware of the Von Erichs, and I've seen each of the Von Erichs wrestle, a handful of matches. But I'm very much think I'm going to learn a lot tonight because I'm not an expert by any means. Bob, I'm intrigued. Are you in a similar spot in that regard, or you got a more fleshed out kind of knowledge of the Von Erichs?
No, absolutely. Like, a lot of the knowledge, like I've read stuff about them. There was an ESPN piece probably like 10 years ago that was pretty good, like 20 minutes, kind of going through the whole history, that kind of. There's I want to say it was like Texas Monthly in 2007 or so, did a whole long form thing about kind of the family too, and that's when I really kind of started learning about them more. Became aware of them because the first Legends of Wrestling game, I think they're like all in it. Now Kerry, Kevin, Fritz is in it. Fritz is in all 3 of them, I believe. And I think David's in the first 1 or 2 as well, and maybe Mike. So yeah, they're all featured. But yeah, I didn't really know who they were until those other couple things came out, and then from there you want to keep learning about them because it's such a crazy story, and ups and downs, and it's wild, man. But yeah, I think I'm going to learn a lot tonight too.
It's crazy because I was like preparing for this, I was kind of thinking about myself, and I was reminded, shout out to whoever it is that runs is it Garrett that runs the Impact account on Twitter? I think it is, right? Whoever it is, they do a wonderful job. And they reminded me, Alex, I'm sure you'll be familiar with this, they brought them in. Kevin and the Von Erich boys worked like Slammiversary in like 2014, maybe 2013.
In Arlington, Texas, and
there you go.
I was there.
Of course you were. And this struck me because it is a decade ago, and what did AEW just do this week? It's like, it's crazy. So I was kind of pondering that, and so I think for me, it was when I've often discussed that kind of timeline where I started watching the the documentaries, both in house and out, and so on and so forth. And that was where I first became kind of aware of the story. And it is a story that you don't really buy as being real, which is ridiculous to say, but it's true. Alex said the same thing. And then since then, kind of just dipping my toe almost in each guy's kind of catalog and seeing what kind of wrestler each of them were. Very much a thing I'd like to watch more of. I'd like to watch more of World Class in general, honestly. So I'm intrigued. Alex is the veteran of our group in terms of the Von Erichs in particular, not to age you, of course. How would you track your history of the Von Erichs, your fandom, so on and so forth, mate? Take it away.
Bob, there was one of the WWE games that had Kevin and Kerry in it, and the Sportatorium was like a venue you could wrestle in, right? Wasn't
it?
Yes.
It was recent, right? Semi-recent.
Let's see. Because they haven't really been in many of those games.
They had also around that, maybe it might have been before that, but I know when they did those first few lines of like the Legends figures, not the classic superstars, but the Legends, Kerry and Kevin both got one that now like run for hundreds of dollars to get either of them. Which,
my God,
yeah, I've tried, and
it seems it was 2K17.
There we go.
Yeah,
right on.
Auditorium being on there is so awesome, dude.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. All right. So number one, I'm gonna try to be on my best behavior tonight. I might do some Fritz impressions and whatnot, but I think I'm gonna try to do a good job here and keep it relatively classy. And number two, if I do start going off, y'all feel free to cut me off, just because like I have so much real life experience, not personally with Fritz and the boys, but just from growing up around, in Dallas, and like just understanding. I'll when we get to like our retrospectives, I'm sure I'll go way off. But like as far as myself personally, of course, the first thing I remember is Texas Tornado, Kerry, and the WWF when I was a little kid, won the Intercontinental title, SummerSlam 91, 90, something like that. And then my dad graduated from college at Bowling Green in, I think he said 79, and he moved to Texas, and he moved to Dallas specifically in 1981. He met my mom, was born and raised in Dallas in 1984. And so like they both were, my dad, like when I remember growing up, he would relay things to me because he grew up in Ohio, and so they got big time wrestling there. So he would talk about Bobo Brazil, like he was the greatest wrestler of all time. And then because of his time in Dallas, he just, waking up on Saturday mornings and World Class was on, he would have stories about, one of my favorite stories he had was he told me once about when he was at work. He worked, I think, at Dallas City Hall at this point, but he said they just had the radio on in the office, and like a statement went out that the Fabulous Freebirds today are filming a music video for their new song Bad Street USA, and if you want to be in this music video, come down to such and such. They gave the address. And then my mom comes from a family of so including herself, there's 4 sisters. And so like they weren't necessarily the target audience for the World Class program, because they would have been 20s and 30s by the time it started. And as we'll get to, that there's a very heavy teenage girl presence at those shows. But that being said, at no point, like, I can recall times that my grandma, God bless her, and my aunts, all, when I would talk about wrestling, being like, well, are the Von Erichs there? Is that like what the Von Erichs do? And it could, because they were just such local celebrity and such, they were just literally icons of the local scene there. And my mom's job at that point in the 80s, she worked for a concert promotion company. And she, like, just the way she would speak of the Von Erichs and things I remember just from like growing up, her telling me just acting like these people were, that the Von Erichs were like on par in terms of popularity with, these massive acts that would come through town. And so it was always, I remember when I was in college, maybe, we were on some trip, might have been in Massachusetts or Pennsylvania. I think it might have been Pittsburgh, but I remember wearing a wrestling shirt into a gas station, and the guy behind the counter was just like, might have been RVD or something. He's just like, that guy's good. And then the guy behind me was this middle-aged man. He's like, you watch the wrestling? I was like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, these guys today, they're all right, but they know Bruno Sammartino. Bruno was the real deal. And, there's this thing that's been lost. I remember, Joe, one time you made the joke of, I don't even know if we were on air, but you said, do you really think like 30 years from now there's going to be some old dude at the bar that's like, man, Drew Mack, that's when wrestling was real? And then I was like, that stuck with me. But like that Bruno thing, I remember because wrestling is what it is now. Like if you're younger, especially, you'd be so inclined to write off the idea that there are, 2 or 3 generations ago, there are people that still remember Bruno Sammartino as like the baddest motherfucker on earth. And in Dallas, that was always the case. And we'll get to, some of the appearances that they had in later years, and Kevin specifically, where it's just like, if they were in Dallas, that shit still meant something. And they were like, they were dignitaries. They were a staple of the scene and whatnot. And so I remember personally just the time I spent as a kid in Dallas, Reunion Arena, and then seeing the Sportatorium, which was up. I remember driving by that just all the time. Like when I was a kid, like when we would go to visit my grandma in Dallas, my dad would make a point to like drive by it every time until they tore it down in, I don't know, 04 or 05 or something. And it's become one of the things of, I think someone commented earlier in the chat about, if you're familiar with that area and, Dallas, and you lose sight of that doesn't necessarily translate globally just because they are such accepted members of like the local history. And, it's very big deal. And like I said, I'm trying to avoid some of our usual jesting and whatnot, because I think anyone going to see the movie this week, next week, or the week after that in the future, they know what's coming and they know the tragic part of it. So I think it's important to, before all that shit happened, what they accomplished was something significant.
Absolutely. I think it's one of those, generally we'll do one wrestler on these shows, right? Or maybe we've done a tag team a couple times. And, it's the thing where it's like, that's a lot to cover in a couple of hours, and watching 6 matches. Fair to say this is taking that to the extreme, right? So it's very much one where our usual format is just kind of a framework, and we're going to bounce all over the place, I'm sure, because it's kind of inevitable when you're covering a story of, even if there was just the in-ring triumph, there's a lot here, let alone when you pair it with everything else. So the Oracle of Wrestling, as you've returned. I hope the pizza's nice, mate. Yeah, wonderful.
Fantastic, man.
Beautiful. I'm intrigued. Your Von Erichs fandom, knowledge, when did it come to be? How much did you know before this? So on and so forth. Paint a picture best you can, mate, before returning to that wonderful pizza.
The Von Erichs and World Class in Texas and all that stuff really was just kind of, or at least the Von Erich name was just something that I had heard for the longest time. My original knowledge came from the World Class, the Tragedy of World Class DVD that the Fed put out, 2007? Alex, you might know that, the exact year.
It would have been between there and 09, because I think it was coinciding with them going to the Hall of Fame.
Right. And of course, they tell their version of that story, but it's still a very
still very well done
and powerful and fascinating and terrible story.
Any version of that story is worth watching, I think, right?
And then Death Flight Driver, of course, to the 80 sets starting in 07 or so. The Texas set was made. And my brother had the Texas set, and I remember visiting one summer and watching a lot of matches from the Texas set. It was like I think it was like the top 175 matches of Texas, and of course had all the feuds. And
Sick.
And of course, when they did the sets, it was all basically original footage, so you'd get the theme music and all that stuff. So that in 08, 09, that period was a period where I started to really kind of, the footage explosion happened at the time.
Mhm.
That was really truly the era of the footage explosion, the true era of it, or the beginning of it, when meaning you weren't just sitting around waiting for somebody to send you something in the mail via VHS.
I
There
thought
was,
now is
there was
the footage boom because we get GCW live in HD every week.
right, right. But yeah, so that was my exposure to them, and there's a lot of great stuff from that period. Um, World Class is really a fascinating promotion on its own, because it was nationally, it was actually underrated in how they sort of expanded, before Vince did. And also with their production and how clean and great it looked, also done before Vince.
That's one of the
Um,
big things I remember from the Fed documentary is them calling out the cameraman on the apron and
Yep.
like all the
mhm.
the way it was presented was different than anything, which we'll be able to talk to with the
Yeah.
matches.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's a I just remember really enjoying watching some of the stuff from that Texas set, and like kind of having like an eye-opening experience about, the Von Erichs aren't just a name, but like these guys are actually pretty damn good in the ring,
Yeah.
especially Kerry and Kevin.
Mm.
David was very good too, but his story ends so early.
Right.
But yeah, I haven't gone back and revisited it enough, but it's always a story that always kind of it's one you can't look away from.
Right. Once you know it,
Both
it's not one
both
you're
the
going to
success and
confuse. Yeah.
the tragedy of it. So I'm very much looking forward to see this movie.
It's interesting. You mentioned about the in-ring part of it, and generally, when the kind of the tale is told quickly, at least in history, David is cited as like the most natural worker, right? And they often talk about how he was kind of destined for NWA gold. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, his story ended far too early, as all of this did. But he was, I mean, that was incredible, really, the circumstance of that. Um, but I do agree with you, and I think we'll get into it more and more detail later. But Kevin has a very unique in-ring style, which I know our friend, the Confirmed Shoot, is very, very fond of. And you also
Wait, hold on,
see,
hold on.
Mhm.
He's working?
Yeah, exactly, right, indeed. There's a moment in that Flair match where he refuses to go up for a suplex. He just blocks it for a shoot. It's awesome. And I think, our third act is Kerry, and I think you see kind of some of the more nuance to his game also. It's very interesting, the in-ring part of it. I think this show
The
will help in that regard, at least.
the Carry Act, and credit to Oracle for calling out that Lawler match. I think just kind of as a teaser for when we get to that, those two matches show like I don't want to say squandered because he obviously was successful in his career, but like it made me think of Joe. You and I just like going nuts. Andre and Inoki and Andre and Stan Hansen. Like
Yeah.
one of those matches in that Carry Act is like this guy really was one of the best
Right.
performers in the industry.
It also, the 1-2 punch in that third act shows you an adjustment that had to be made. Like you see a difference, right, and how Kerry had to change the way he wrestled for obvious reasons. We'll shine a bigger light on later, but nonetheless, Alex, you was generally this is like a whole process. We throw matches out and we try and what's our priority, what's our focus. On this occasion, you brought forward a complete list. We all co-signed it. What went into that, and what do you think we kind of settled with in terms of like the acts were less important here, right? It was more about
Yeah.
representing the family. So yeah, explain that process and then kind of the list we came up with best you can, mate.
Well, I texted y'all that I had an adult gummy and got really focused on like just oh man like because I was so excited about this idea and because like y'all all let me propose this, and this is what we chose. So I'm like, all right, we gotta nail this shit. And Oracle wanted to end on the Super Clash match, and I think that's for more than just the Von Erichs. That's a perfect ending because we see the heights they reach, and then in 1985, this guy named Vince McMahon did something called WrestleMania, and you can see how dramatically different the business is between what we've done and where we finish, or where we start and where we finish. On top of that, wanted to do something with Fritz, and Fritz, I'm not tracking down old fucking 16 millimeter of him doing the Nazi gimmick, so I'm like, let's find what's the best we can do here, and wanted to start with a Fritz match. David's catalog is it's weird in that like he has matches with Flair that you can easily find just by Googling, but I don't think they're too good, too great, I guess I should say. They're a better match than I could have. And I just wanted to get something that kind of showed what, the rough lump of clay that he was and could have become. Second act, we got to get a Kevin Singles match in there. And honestly, Flair wrestled Kerry, Kevin, and David, and I think the match we chose is the best match Flair had with any of the Von Erichs. Have to include the Freebirds, but then like I texted y'all also, like we probably should include Mike at some point in this, and the match we chose for that I think is the best we could have done on both fronts. There's the very famous six-man with there's two famous six-man tags with David, Kerry, and Kevin against the Freebirds, one at the Sportatorium and one at, I believe, Reunion Arena on 4th of July. But what a spectacle we have on our hands with the match we chose. And then in the third act, for better or for worse, or however you want to read history, Kerry's the one that will be remembered as the guy who broke out and became the star. He was the guy that, and they were all stars in their own right, but Kevin and David were the only ones that had the same level of notoriety Kerry did on a Texas level. And then Kerry's the guy who managed the WWF. And, he's the guy that, he's the guy that won the NWA title. And he's the guy that after David passed, Fritz was at the factory line. All right, next one, step up. And with the matches we've got, I have very strong feelings about that jumbo match, so I'm very excited that we're going to get to talk about that. But it's a roadmap, and Kevin wrestled into the '90s, and there was Chris, and we're not trying to mimic the movie and cutting him out. I honestly don't know if I've ever seen a Chris Von Erich match. And I've watched a lot of old World Class episodes and whatnot, and Chris, in many ways, is the most tragic of the bunch, I think, and I didn't think it would do much good to try to tackle that. And we're trying to keep this upbeat, and we're trying to find the peaks of what this family from Denton County accomplished. And I think I did have a perverted thought that we were going to finish on a Russ and Marshall match, and then I was like, no, we got to keep this pure, man, because we can get this out of the way now. The only match of theirs that I think I've seen that I'm like, that was all right. It was when he wrestled the Briscoes at the Flair show. But Joe, you and me, the Briscoes could have carried us to a decent match as well. So
that would have been. I would have to throw a flag on that play. I think if that one had been at the bottom of your proposed lineup, I said there's got to be something else. God bless them. That maybe we can revisit this in a month after the wrestled the FTR on Collision, and we can do like a bonus. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, it's not something we'll be venturing towards. So good luck to them, though. I'm glad to see they worked like 3 shows in 3 days for Tony last week. So good for them.
I got to see Kevin Von Erich live, so that was cool. And he came out to Stranglehold, so I was just like, all right, this is awesome. Me and
There's
5
one
other
thing
people.
Tony will do is play some music, bro. That's his.
He does love that, man.
He loves it. All right. Wonderful. I think we all agree. We all was kind of messaging about it over the last couple of days about. I think we're all super happy with how the lineup came out, and it is a daunting task. I think you did a hell of a job. So, bravo, and let's get rolling here as we get started. July 25th, 1975. Fritz Von Erich, Giant Baba. Now, this is before we even
last
get
call
into
in Japan, brother.
Indeed, before we even get into the match, I want to know, because we all kind of talked around it, but how familiar is everyone with Fritz the wrestler? Because it kind of dawned on me as I watched this that this is probably the first Fritz match I've watched that isn't him like as the third, like kind of just as the old Von Erich in one of those tags where he would appear kind of sporadically. Oracle, are you like familiar with single? Not young. He's certainly not young here, but pre everything that's about to follow Fritz.
No, I'm certainly not familiar. I've seen the multi-mans from
Right.
Texas, and of course, we have one of those we'll talk about later.
We sure
But,
do.
Let me tell you something. I'm gonna say what I said in the DMs. It's like two ugly bastards fighting in a barn over the last bale of hay or something, man. This shit fucking ruled.
It's so grimy and like gritty and nasty, and you tweeted the clip, Alex. He like jump starts father, and
Dude, yeah.
they get a lot, as all of these matches do, but particularly this one because they're old lads. The
This
claw
is an
they get a
amazing
lot out of.
spectacle. It
Yes,
probably goes a beat too long for me.
Yes, yeah.
But when Fritz gets cut open on the side of his head and puts in the claw, man, and like it's such a silly move, but like he works it. I mean,
They get a lot out of it. Yeah.
And
The
Bob has
Japanese
always
crowd thinks that
been
thing's like attempted murder, and that
Yes.
plays off later in a match that
Yeah.
we talk about. Yeah.
Bob has always been like amazing at selling like death holds like that. That's like one of Bob's strengths. That scene when he's got like it's basically like a horror scene. He's got him in the iron claw, and he's bleeding down his face, pouring blood all over Baba. And like it's one of the most and like the crowd's going like it's incredible.
Yeah.
And like there's so much hate in this, and like Baba gets pissed and starts tearing into Fritz with his. I fucking love like when he's chopping him with Baba's chops into the cut. Like this shit fucking rules, man. Like,
Yeah.
and then for a minute there I got slightly depressed because wrestling isn't good anymore, and then gotta get my typical line in there about that. But yeah, like this shit was incredible, man. Like, and again, my biggest complaint is that it goes too long. But
Right.
like, and there's not a whole lot of like versatility or like
No, it's kind of one
complexity.
note.
It's just like
but,
two big ugly bastards fighting and like bleeding and like Fritz probably has to claw hold it in for like 20 minutes, and like Baba's out here like doing his fucking, but like the way that they perform with their facial expressions and their selling,
yeah.
and their Fritz is really good at being a menace, like menacing and scary and like dangerous, right? And Baba's so good at selling and like showing vulnerability. And Fritz does a great job of that later. When Baba makes his comeback and they start doing those countouts or whatever. But yeah, like this fucking ruled, man. Like just a total spectacle. I really enjoyed this one. I trusted that it would be good, but I honestly was surprised at how good it was.
So where is Fritz at here in his career? Like where are we at this point? How old is Fritz? Do we know? Bob, you're the expert.
I believe Jack Atkinson at this point would have been close to 50, and
Yeah.
he looks 70, but like
Yes, he does.
he looks. I guess that's part of my thing, and I'm going to say this a lot. Be like, it's us Texans. He looks like so many like. When I lived out in the city called Kyle, and it was before it took off, that was just like fucking. When I moved there, it was tumbleweeds and whatnot. And there were ranchers I met that were just big, tall dudes that wore Dickies jumpsuits that had hands like Fritz von Erich, man. And so, like, seeing him here, his hands are so disproportionate to the rest of his body. They're huge. And just the way he grabs onto Baba's big ass dome. But like Fritz, okay, so Fritz started wrestling in the 50s, I want to say. And he did after World War II with Waldo von Erich. They had that traveling Nazi gimmick. They were like a tag team, and then he ended up in Texas in the '60s because I remember he kind of just made the first tragedy of their family. Their little boy Jackie died in the early '60s. Nothing to do with wrestling, just a really awful accident that happened to a 6-year-old boy and killed him. And so he ended up in Texas, and then he was like revered in Japan at this point because I know throughout the '60s, in the wake of Ricky Dozan's death, he had some matches with Baba then and Inoki and some other people. There's a famous one you can find from maybe like 69, 70, 71. When did the split happen? Was that 72 when New Japan and All Japan formed?
New Japan formed in 72, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
72.
So that back when it was just JWA,
Yes.
and there's a match they had that was pretty famous on local television. So this match, honestly, was kind of like Rock and Austin at 19, these old rivals like crossing paths again, and this time it's personal and we got to tear it down. And Fritz. So Fritz was already kind of like a spectacle and no longer like just a regular wrestler because Baba is obviously always a spectacle. But it was the Texas Death Match, which in the '60s in Texas specifically, that was when Fritz wrestled Doran's Funk Sr. And they, we're going to talk about some tall tales as we go through this, but there's the stories of the 3-hour Texas Death Match in Amarillo that they had, and the cops had to shut it down because it was curfew, and so that's, I think, what makes this match kind of awesome. There is this sense of just like, God damn it, I want to win this fucking fight.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the best way to kind of describe it, right? The dynamic, and it is like Oracle said, it's not the most versatile, and it is kind of one note in that way, but it's a hell of a note, man, and it's fun to watch. Get a little handwork in there too, right? Shades of Electra and Mickey, Bob.
So yeah, I was gonna ask if you brought your hanky because we have 2 matches that involve limb work, and I just was expecting you to dab your forehead off when we start talking about the hand selling that goes on.
It's very exciting, I try to act like I've been here before. Bob, did you get excited about the handwork or the old fellas whacking each other in this one?
Yeah, both actually.
Both.
No, it was great, man. Like you're watching it, it's like it was 50 years ago. It doesn't feel like 50 years ago. It really doesn't look like it was 50 years ago. So that really was a big thing for me. Fritz just kind of going through the whole ceremony and just not having time for it and just getting right to fighting was good. And Baba got him with a couple of really good elbows in the head. It's good stuff. And Oracle really put it best in the DM. Just 2 old miserable guys just beating the shit out of each other, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah, sounds like wrestling to me, brother. I mean, Alex, anything else on our first match, mate? Go for
it. Fritz just shows up ready. He's got his just blue t-shirt on and just kind of takes it off, and he's just like an old dude ready to fight. And like I posted it on Twitter, he beats the shit out of Bob at the jump of this match. Like he's just throwing those standing hammer fists to his head, and they're like every shot Fritz lands in the first like 15 seconds make a disgusting noise. And then, Baba grabbed a hold and said, "Slow the fuck down." Did you notice Baby Onita in the corner?
I did not. My God.
Yeah, Baba, I think, hands his ring jacket to him, and he looks like a 15-year-old child.
He would have been. Good Lord, that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah, I think we kind of covered it. It's so simple. It's just Fritz has the claw, and Baba tries to break his hand so he can't use the claw, so then he can use his chops and elbows and whatnot. And it's one of those matches that at the end you feel just like the one guy survived. He didn't really win, and it is gross when Fritz gets up at the end. He's got all that trash on his back from the floor, and there's streamers stuck to him, and it's just it's a very interesting I guess spectacle, as we've said so far. And I didn't even mean to do this, but I think it pays off very interestingly with one of the matches in our third act.
Yeah, I would agree. The blood that Fritz gets is like that. I mean, the gross is the right word for that, right? Like on the kind of side of his head,
and it's like kind of like pulsating the whole time, and it's disgusting.
Yeah,
Someone called it out in the chat, and it's worth mentioning. They said Onita, Baba's protege. Baba, at one point in time, his 3 young boys were Atsushi Onita, Tenryu, and Jumbo Tsuruta. That's like the craziest stable
It's
of
insane.
men
Yeah.
people have ever had. Yeah.
It's insane for anyone, but especially for Bubba. That visual is wild.
There's if you look hard enough on the internet, you can find a picture of all 4 of them in suits doing the Rockettes kicks. It's incredible.
Wonderful. Real Graps. Okay. Speaking of real Graps, we jump ahead. Our second match of Act 1. We're in 79, I believe, right? May 27th, 1979. We're in St. Louis, wrestling at the Chase. I know, Alex, you were keen on working some of that in there. There's another kind of piece of history that we've yet to explore. David Von Erich and Harley Race. This is a kind of a famous match in David's kind of breaking out. I think he's 21 here. The scenario is a handicap situation, right? Because someone reached out to me about which match it was, and it's listed as like versus David and Fritz, whatever it is. And the finish of this is pretty significant, I think it's fair to say. So before we get into the match itself, Alex, I do want to give you a chance to talk about wrestling at the Chase. I think was it last year where the NWA like did like a throwback to this? And Bob, you remember this? I'm not making
Yeah,
this
they
up,
do
right?
their anniversary show there every year now.
Wow, did they have a good house there, or
Mm.
Yeah.
No, they try.
Can't all be winners, right?
The opening video package of one of them had John Goodman doing a voiceover, and people speculated that they paid for a cameo for him to do it.
That
Yeah.
rules. Beast either way. But anyway, Alex, because I know it was like something you noted. So, wrestling at the Chase.
Oh no, just like a very interesting crossroads for us to highlight here, because the Von Erichs, obviously you think of Dallas and the Sportatorium and shit, and the match that like really showed people that David could be next in line was wrestling at the Chase. Matisic on the call, and Harley Race in there being just a god tier professional wrestler in this match. And they do have a match from 77, I want to say it is, that like is a time limit draw, and I think it was the idea of it then was to do what this did, because Fritz was on the NWA board, and my boy David, we got to get him going. And the first match that Harley had with David is not good. It's just like David green as whatever analogy you want to use. And so to his credit, this one shows how much he kind of grew in terms of like presence and just kind of instinct, as it were. But we have a Portland match in our back catalog, and we do love us. We've got WCW Saturday night matches. We love television studio wrestling, and I think this is a very important piece of wrestling history. And who better to feature at the Chase in this with one of our stars than Harley Race? And
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's just God, I love the crowd in this so much, because we have the crazy Texas crowds and the girls go nuts for the Von Erichs later, but this is just like there's just old women here that just hate Harley Race and just want to see Harley Race lose. It's oh man, this is wrestling here, and we're not going to be talking about Brett and Austin at 13. This is not, but for the purposes of what we're doing, there's a lot of things that are very standout and special about this match.
Yeah, and it is purpose the right word, right? It does have a very clear intent, and especially on Harley's part, and they kind of they get a lot out of that initial headlock, and of course I mentioned the finish is quite the visual. It's a big one. Bob, what did you make of Harley and David here, mate?
Yeah, I thought it ruled. I didn't really know what to expect. Obviously, David, not only the one that I've seen the least of, but really the one that I've probably heard the least about. Like at least just talking about him, Kevin and Carrie. You hear a lot more about them throughout the years, and there's reasons for that, obviously. But it really does do a great job, kind of establishing David as a star, especially like how you're talking about. Harley gives him a ton, and letting him do the Iron Claw and ending the match that way is such a big thing too. Because I mean, at that time in particular, Harley's one of the biggest guys around. Is he the champion at this point? I don't remember for sure.
He had been the champ for 2 years or so. Yeah.
So I mean, it's a huge deal, and it goes a long way into trying to make a guy almost in one night.
Yeah, and to your point, it's like he does both here, right? Like he gives him like the entire match and then puts him over. It's insane. Like usually one or the other would be a lot, let alone both. They give like David has an early false finish and then just he kind of just like overwhelms Harley for like most of the round times. It's a wild watch. Very, very purposeful in that regard. Oracle, what did you make of David and Harley here?
Yeah, this was really good. I was popping at like the crowd's reaction during the whole match because you can get like get those first like 3 or 4 or 5 rows or whatever that you see, from where the hard cam is. But I think my favorite parts were obviously the finishes.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't he catch him in it, or does he initially get him in it when he when Harley goes for the headbutt?
Yeah, Harley goes for like the headbutt off the second rope, and he catches him in it, and that's like it's something like with the claw. Now you think of the Kurt Angle ankle lock or those submission holds where it's like immediate like tap out. Like this is just like
amazing.
he has him in it for like the last 2 minutes of the match.
That was amazing. Like when he caught him, because like that's something you would see like some shit today where like some guy gets caught in a submission from like doing a top rope spot, and of course it also shows how kind of I guess the word would be innovative Harley Race was, because like people always talk about how Harley was buried by the old timers, when he was around, because he would do shit like that.
It's crazy.
There's also a
He's
spot where
unbelievable in this match, dude.
Yeah, he's so good.
He throws a fucking disgusting headbutt on David at one point, and like I yelled, I was like, "Oh shit!" Like he like.
I didn't know if it made connection though, because he didn't slap his thigh, Devin. I didn't know if he.
Oh, I'm sorry. But yeah, that shit fucking ruled. But a lot of fun. It was just fun to see like Harley give David so much, and like he's literally like bumping and stooging and like letting David have so much. It was fun to watch Fritz and Kevin out there on the
yes, very
on
much.
the outside. Fritz like basically
Head
looking.
coach.
Fritz looks like my dad in the morning, like walking around without a shirt on. Like, but
Tremendous.
yeah, it was that finish really is something special though, because this was kind of the beginning of David's rise, right? Like this match was really kind of set everything in stone for his rise and eventual sort of run to try to be NBA World's Champion.
Yeah, absolutely. Harley Race is just thrilled at any chance to take like a crate, like just exceed expectations as he's bumping.
Bump man.
He takes the one here on the floor, right? He takes he goes for like a pile driver and gets back body dropped out of it, and it's like he just loves it. I don't know if a wrestler's ever took such joy in even when he's managing Vader, we often joke, he'll be Vader's manager and he'll take like the biggest bump of the match. That's very much on display here. Super selfless performance on his part. Alex, I'll circle back to you. Anything else on David and Harley, brother?
I'm not too vain. I have some clothes that I think look cool. Harley Race was the age that I am when this match happened. I would hope that I don't look as old as Harley Race does in this match.
I think you're good on that. Yeah.
All right, I'll take it. Yeah, we've covered a lot of it so far. I just
holy shit, you're 62 years old.
I was born 40 with a beard and mutton chops. David, I love the urgency of him wanting it, and like Fritz being just the old fucking Texas bastard. He's already taken his shirt off, and he's just like, he's ready to do it. And David, so my note says nude Fritz because it cuts at one point to him sitting down, and it's right from where his boots cut off up, and he has no clothes on except for his like tights, so he just looks incredibly naked, and he's just sitting there like barking orders. It's It's ridiculous. But speaking of barking orders, so like the first like sequence they do, they go to the corner and Harley, I think, punches him or forearms him coming out. And the second time they go to the ropes and the ref gets in for a rope break, you know, the studio audience is just kind of watching, and you just hear Fritz, it reverberates off the walls of the chase, go, clean break, clean break. And he's just yelling at the referee. And, you know, he wants order restored in this. For the joking we do of Harley and also the type of shit that Oracle, yeah, probably like the old timers be like, what the, you know, the Sheik and Bobo at this point in time where Bobo couldn't move, so he just would work matches out of the corner. They were probably telling Harley he's doing too much, because I can't tell you any other time I've really seen this specific sequence, which is rare in wrestling, that headlock that he has where Harley kind of slowly bridges up out of it. Like, and Harley, you know, Harley was 2 packs a day and, you know, a 12 pack every night, and he gets up and then he takes it back down, and then he tries to bridge back up and then he takes him back down, and it's like a really like a game of pendulum, but it's very interesting. At one point, because David is obviously not like the superstar he would become in the Texas scene, the most of the crowd there just kind of likes the idea that this young kid that, you know, they know his old man, that this kid is, you know, facing the world champion, and it's a headlock or an arm wringer or something he has at one point, and a woman in the crowd goes, "Work with it, David. Just work with it. Keep going."
That is wrestling, man. That's pro wrestling right there.
But yeah, I love the way this match plays out, and the majority of it is just Dave dog walking Harley, and then when Harley does get like the upper hand, him just beating the shit out of David with headbutts.
Yes.
He's doing those knee drops, just anything he can to take him down. But then the finish, yeah, when he gets the claw, people don't quite know what happened at first until they see like Harley turn over in pain, and then I hate that I sound like such an asshole with this, of like, in wrestling, you know, you can figure out a lot of times how they do something. There was a wrestler who had this move at one point in time. He would grab your hand and he would snap your fingers, and it would make this noise that made it sound like he snapped their fingers. I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, what the fuck? And then I watched it back 2 times and I figured out, you know, what the trick was. There's a line between those, because there's stuff like that, and then there's people like Sabu whose thing was always just do it for real, and then they won't be able to figure it out. In this case, I can formulate in my head how it happened, but it just looks so good on TV that I don't care. When David puts him in the claw and Harley somehow gigs while in the claw to where the blood starts spewing out of his head, like, there are horror movies that haven't pulled shit off like that that well. And like, I was just losing my mind, like, oh my God, because the visuals, he takes him down and then it's just like pooling on his arm and running out, and it's insane. Like that's the point. There's a skill to that. If I watch something like Bob called out, this shit we're watching is nearly 50 years old. If I watch that and I'm just like, I don't, that's magic right there. That's movie magic, man. And that's what these guys go for. And especially in a situation where, if we're in the Tokyo Dome and we're doing the wide shot, like the Okada pose, and we're that far away and someone pulls something off like that, that doesn't mean anything. There's fucking 40 people there watching it in a television studio, and this guy pulls off something like that. It's amazing. And then back to wrestling used to be good. He has him in the claw, and like, David is so brilliant here at the ending, where he just keeps holding the claw, and he's not like checking to the ref like, oh. He's just like working it, and then the ref, I love the ref checks, I think, Harley's arm 5 times because he's not sure that he's out. And when he does go out, David just doesn't, the ref calls for the bell, and David just keeps holding it until the ref tells him, no, it's over. And then David, you know, looks over to like his dad and his brother, like, oh my God, I won. Yeah. And then, you know, we thought when we did Luger, we talked about Luger beating Hogan on Nitro. Like, David reacts like he just won like a legitimate world's championship here. And it wasn't even like for the title. It's, and again, we're not talking about the greatest match of all time, but this is a very good, and there's so many little things about this you can break down and celebrate.
Absolutely. I'm surprised you didn't just name Pete Dunne when you were making a reference to that.
I forgot Pete did that move, and I was trying to avoid the obvious.
Yes, you did. There you go. Save that for another day. You'll have that trick up your sleeve. All right. So I think the best way to do this when we get to the end of an act is rather than matches from the era, we'll single the individuals that act. So are there any other matches we'd like to call out for Fritz and David? And that's probably the best way to do this. Anything come to mind, Alex, that for Fritz or David matches to know, other than the things we've obviously kind of already circled in our conversation?
Yeah, like the 6-man with the Freebirds with David. You'll find some decent collections of their work in Japan that are very interesting.
Yeah.
I think between Fritz and Kerry, we kind of cover the pinnacles of that. But in World Class, Fritz came out of retirement again, and he had a match with Bundy. That was, if you've never seen King Kong Bundy in World Class Championship
He's
Wrestling,
awesome.
that is like a
Yes.
revelation, dude. Because all I ever knew was WrestleMania 2 Bundy that feuded with Hogan, and like he's got hair and thick eyebrows, and he smokes cigars, and
He's kind of cool. Yeah, it's
yeah.
weird.
So I think that all the boys had matches with Kamala that were fun. Politically correct the way they presented Kamala, no, but the matches that they had were definitely entertaining. So, and yeah, Fritz came out for battle royals and all that type of shit, but for what I could like in good conscience recommend in 2023, it's kind of limited with the two of them.
Yeah, I think that's probably, was the next act. We'll kind of see how that evolves, and we'll kind of fill in the gaps as we go here. All right, Oracle. Any other Fritz or David Von Erich recommendations before we move to Act 2, mate? Or are you content?
Those 83 6-mans with the Freebirds are awesome. That July 4th
Yes.
83 match is a classic match that if you're a hardcore wrestling fan listening to our goofy show, you should probably check out.
Which one won the Observer Award of those? Because in 83 they had Match of the Year in the Observer, right? 6-man
Was
did.
it that one?
I'm not sure which date.
The January 4th, January, Jesus, sorry, Bob, 6th, and the July 4th one is the like celebrated one of the greatest world class matches of all time. I just always kind of defer to the famous one they had on TV in the Sportatorium because one, it's in the Sportatorium, and then
Right.
two, it has that part where the three of them, the Kevin, David, and Kerry, hit the triple drop kick on the Freebirds.
Yeah.
That to me is like the image of world class championship wrestling. But the July 4th one, I believe Reunion Arena is the really highly touted one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so January 6th from July 4th. Is that the dates we're circling here? So B Day and
He's not even listening. He's too busy
Yeah,
taking
he's
selfies in his
totally-
CM Punk shirt. He's just like, I'm the real best in the world.
All right, here we go. Act 2. We jump forward here, April 1st, 1983. We've mentioned as a familiar play, right? Ric Flair wrestling one of the Von Erichs for the NWA World's title. This was pretty commonplace.
This is what Rick did everywhere, man. You know?
Yeah, and it needs to be noted, and I was talking to the guys on Discord about this before I came over to the show, but like there is a whole generation more of wrestling fans that isn't aware that this was once what Ric Flair was, in that like this is before
Dude.
he's a total caricature of himself and he's like serious athlete Rick.
Mhm.
And it is striking,
That oh man, you're exactly right. Like it's that there's a part where Kevin's coming out where they pan back to the ring and they start at Flair's boots and just pan up, and he's got his hands on his hips and he's just resplendent and like, yeah, you're exactly right. It's depressing and a fucking shame what he's become as a human being and just as like a character on television, because like when he had that not groundswell, but when he had that what's the phrase I'm looking for? Moment in the sun, where they did like the 30 for 30 and all the like LeBron James and those athletes were like talking about he had swag and all that. He could have just used that to like ride off into the sunset and like have like this distinguished legacy, but instead, woo wings and energy drink. But you're exactly right. Watching this, it's just like, even for us, the complete perverts that just like know this shit page and verse and have watched so much old wrestling, who are aware of who he is, we still lose sight of what he once was just because of everything that like is
Yeah.
modern about him.
This version of Ric Flair is legitimately one of the greatest wrestlers to ever live. Like, it's not a hot take or anything. It's just the reality of him. Whenever you watch it, you're reminded of that. Man, these two have a fun dynamic. I've seen quite a few of their matches. And because of Oracle alluded to earlier, Kevin kind of doesn't know wrestling's fake and just like forces you to fight for every inch. It kind of makes Flair like he has no choice but to adjust his formula somewhat because like sometimes, Flair loves doing the thing where he turns the guy in the corner and chops them, right? And you go like corner to corner. Sometimes Kevin just says, you're not turning me. I'm not doing it. At one point he can't, like Kevin just refuses to let him chop him. He's too close. It's like they're just fighting in there. It has a serious pace. This is like the perfect TV main event. So this is on, for anyone who's not watched these matches, this is on, what episode of TV is this? Like the 9th? April the 9th, maybe on the network, somewhere around there.
This was a big standout during World Class Fridays. I think this
Yeah.
was, that thing didn't, because of the switch from the network to Peacock, that didn't pan out the way it could have. But I think this probably, if you took a poll of all those that participated, it was either this or Harley and Carey at Texas Stadium that were like the best matches.
Yeah. How awesome is it that his knife edge chop is just throughout the whole entire match called the judo chop? God bless, man.
Bill Mercer, baby.
The God bless Bill. Just trying. He's just swinging for the fences.
Oh, and here's Kevin. Oh.
Oracle, what did you make of Kevin Von Erich and Ric Flair?
Yeah, Kevin just rules, man. He looks. Do you think he's fucking Tarzan or something? Out there like barefoot, think he's like,
It's nuts, dude.
like doing all kinds of that shit. Where he like, what the fuck happened? Where he just started putting Flair in a hold and like doing like real graps to him. What the fuck was up with that?
It was Erich trying to win, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Like he started like putting like fucking Flair in a pretzel, and I'm thinking, oh shit, like he thinks this is real.
He's gonna shoot on him. Take the belt home to daddy.
It makes me wonder if Terry ever worked Kevin Von Erich. Probably not.
Oh, brother.
What? Dude.
Yeah. That would take some convincing.
Yeah, this was just. They work with a real intensity, I mean, that's Kevin's forte. Is just he's so physical and intense.
Yeah.
And he wrestles with so much passion, man. Like he's so like the speed he go, like everything, all his movements are like.
He's also like actively innovative. Like some of the stuff he does is like when he does the turnaround, like crossbody.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, like he's doing that thing at a clip that you'd see like nowadays, right? Like the way he goes up the top rope, it's wild, man.
Kevin is awesome, man. Like he just, I don't have much more to say about this match other than like, I agree that like Flair, especially like, I still think peak Flair is that second or third world title run, right? Where he becomes kind of the Flair that everybody knows. But like when he was like doing this shit, like going to Memphis with Lawler in '82, like just in terms of just like a sportsman type, like it's night and day. It's actually it's nuts to watch. Bill Mercer, not a fan. Much bigger fan of Mark Lawrence. Some people hate Mark Lawrence. I love Mark Lawrence. Bill Mercer does kind of pop me because he's so bad.
He's so ridiculous.
Good. Mark Lawrence fucking rules though.
Yeah. They have the deal here where like they have the head scissors, right? That Kevin keeps going back to.
Kevin has great head scissors too, but what an awesome head scissors!
Absolutely. I just love those ideas in matches, because that is one thing with this lineup. Like we all enjoyed every match, but you can already tell by the way we're talking about them. These are very much matches that are best captured by a feel and vibe rather than like a sort of psychological, clinic. Yeah. They're more about like Kevin's perfect example. It's the intensity, it's the pace, not so much an ideas thing. But the head scissors deal is present here. It adds an awful lot. Alex, Flair, and Kevin, what you got, mate?
Well, this did take place at the State Fair Coliseum on the Texas State Fairgrounds. supposedly, a couple months ago when I was there. I walked through the rodeo in this building and maybe once or twice went, yeah. But who's to say if that's true or not? This is, we'll kind of circle back to it with the Kerry match where he wins the belt, but like this is what the idea of the Von Erich wrestling Ric Flair was, and it's kind of funny in the sense of like, if you watch what the week to week and the match to match was of world class television, the Ric Flair match was just that didn't seem like it would work on their television program. But Flair being Flair, and again, you forget just what a fucking god he was in his prime, and he comes out and the crowd just immediately is in love with the idea of they're seeing Ric Flair wrestle, and not only that, but they're seeing him wrestle our guy. Kevin's out there. And yeah, Kevin's just a fucking sack of elbows and knees running at Flair constantly. And Bronco Lubitsch in the ring, man. There are people, at jobs across the country right now, across the world, knowing the holidays are coming up and just kind of coasting for the week, that are working so much harder than Bronco did at this point in world-class championship wrestling. It was just... this wasn't quite yet to the point where he wouldn't even go down for the count. Those are some of my favorites when he stands up above the guys and goes 1, 2, but he takes the softest bumps too. The first one is a soft one, but then Kevin runs into him 150 miles an hour, and Bronco, he told Fritz in the back, "You better give me 50 more bucks. I didn't sign up for this shit." Kevin has a peak Johnny Ramone haircut here. That soft hair that flows down, that's cut just perfectly around your face. Stranglehold is awesome. That was kind of part of the thing too, that I wanted to find all these matches on YouTube, because the Von Erichs a huge part of that music makes it so special for them. And so when you got the WWE Network, in the ghetto or whatever they put in there, then it's just not as good. But Kevin just rules, dude. The thing with Kevin is, we're going to move on to Kerry here in a little bit. And David was he was a basketball player, and he had that kind of long, lanky, rangy body, Kerry all-time physique. And then, but Kevin was like GSP. He was svelte. He was in shape. He was lean. And the way he worked, one of the things old timers talked about Kevin was that Kerry was the one the girls came to see, but Kevin was the one the guys knew. If we were at the bar he's the real deal. If we're at the bar and shit went down, Kevin would be there to, have our backs. And again, you watch the way he works and you understand exactly what works. And
come on, guys, let's have some beers.
We'll put it on my daddy's tab. My dad's a good man. He'll pay for these beers. When Kev comes flying off the ropes and just Flair's trying to do his normal shit, and he still ends up doing it anyway. But Kevin comes flying off the ropes and just elbows Rick in the face, and Rick is like, "Oh god!" and then does the Flair flop after it. It's the Flair at that point. The closing sequence is so good, where Kevin's just all excited. Kevin's like, "Oh, the big pop's coming up, and I can't wait to get there." But Flair still has to get in his blading, so Kevin hits him on the outside, and Flair just goes down like he got sniped and just starts fucking going nuts on his forehead because he has to have the color before he gets in before the finish, because the match ends less than 30 seconds after he sliced his forehead open. But Rick is just so, I gotta have the Rick match, brother. It's, oh man. It's so much fun. And when Kevin wins, one thing, Rick is 2 steps too far. So when Kevin lands, Flair goes to fall, and Kevin lands ribs first on Flair's knees. It had to hurt so bad, but adrenaline and whatnot. And then he wins, and Oracle's personal favorite, David Manning, gets in the ring to take control of the situation.
I fucking hate that piece of shit. We're going to talk about him in the next match.
Yeah, so the finish is kind of
the original Aubrey Edwards.
The finish goes without saying in these scenarios that you're going to get some bullshit, right? Like, it's like, might as well have it on the marquee, honestly.
My
Yeah.
mom's here, and I watched. This was the one. This and the 6-man I watched out in the living room, and she goes, "But I thought Kevin won," and I had to explain. I was like, "Well, this is what we call a dusty finish," and yeah, I mean, even when you watch it, like Bob, for example, I'm sure he's like, I know Kevin Von Erich never won the NWA title, so what the fuck is this shit? And then you get the shot of Kevin with the belt, which looks cool, but that's that's all it is.
Yeah.
Flair's gonna leave with the belt, and but the match itself is a lot of fun, and I, as you can tell, found myself endlessly tickled with the idea of like Flair just trying to have the match he has everywhere, but Kevin's just so excited that it's just like, fuck you, dude. We're getting here one way or the other.
He's so aggressive, man. It's awesome. And their matches were always like this.
He does something too I've never ever seen another wrestler do, and it's just because I think Kev's might be a little bit out there. He gets in the corner, and I guess he got hard weight at some point. He's bleeding from his nose. He bends down, lifts his knee up, and uses his knee pad to wipe his nose. And I guess because it's there, you got to, you can be ambidextrous. Use what you got to use.
Whatever it takes, bro. Whatever it takes. Bob, what do you think, mate?
I loved it. I had a great time with it. Right before the knee pad thing, he screams, "My nose is broken," which was very funny. Just letting everyone know. Yeah, just good stuff, man. Like, I had obviously never seen it before. I was entertained the whole time. Finish is a little weird if you are not aware of the rules 40 years later. Might confuse you for a couple minutes, but might have to go back and see what happened there, allegedly. But yeah, hell of a time.
I'm not convinced they were booking it with that in mind, to be honest.
I don't think so.
Fritz sitting there like, what about in 40 years, though? Like, what?
Well, there's going to be this thing called Peacock in 40 years, and old Bobby O'Neill's going to be tuning in, so we got to figure out what we're going to do here. I did forget to add to Joe. I thought of you. Did you know David at the end? He runs in looking like a Flint Tropic with that jumpsuit that he's got on. It's like he just got back from the Mavericks game, starting lineup.
Yeah, it popped me. Everything here is awesome. Honestly, this is like one of those time cutters where everything is a blast. The commentary is very funny because, of course, it is. Bob, is it fair to say this is why Ric Flair was listed officially as your greatest wrestler ever?
Yeah, this is a strong case.
Yeah. Should try. I need to ask you about that more. That's one of the more kind of incredible things you did. Did you ever hear about Alex? What he did?
What's that?
Bracket. He had a bracket of his all-time favorites, and then he himself went through and did matchups, and Flair came out on top. Huh?
I wasn't there.
Well, who did the bracket then, Bob? I mean, come on.
I had to make the bracket so you guys can do a whole show without me.
Well, we remember it slightly differently, but I know you're a big Flair fan nonetheless. All right, there we go. Wonderful stuff. Now, we're ahead a year, May 6th, 1984, and this is, of course, and I mean, there's no kind of better way to capture this story. And even if we didn't do this, we'd do another match from this show, the more obvious one, right? I actually agree with your call on it, Alex, but I mean, here we are at the David Tribute Show in 84. When you're watching these, I don't know if we all did it, like where we just watched them in one line, but if you're watching them close to each other regardless, that kind of paints the picture of, well, doesn't it? I mean, my goodness. This is, of course, the famous Kerry Von Erich title win, which, Alex, you mentioned it when you listed, like, I don't think is really all that much. I've never seen the match where Flair wins it back. Have you ever seen the match in Japan where Flair wins it back? Or
I don't know if it's like it exists anywhere.
See, I didn't know it did either, but I saw earlier it had like a rating, and it was, and so I was like, maybe it does. Maybe the tape's there somewhere. Someone's seen it and rated it. I don't know.
It's that old Kevin Nash line he had about when Dave would give Japanese matches in the late 80s. Like, you never fucking saw that.
Indeed. It is, of course, the Von Erichs versus the Freebirds, so a very particular incarnation of the Von Erichs here, a different starting lineup, as we mentioned earlier. My goodness. Fritz, the look, the Fritz vibe we have here as he teams up with Kevin and Mike. I truly could not stop laughing at just everything about his demeanor here. the way he looks, how little he can physically do, and most importantly, the amount of sweat that man amasses across this 6 minutes. By the end of this match, he looks like he's never going to move again. He looks it's over, man. It is insane.
Dude, I just know he shotgunned a Keller's double cheeseburger and a fucking pack of Reds backstage before the match, and he was like, "All right, time to go to work."
It literally looks like that. It looks like someone's reminded him he's wrestling. You know, he's because he sort of staggers out too. And who was it? One of the boys, I couldn't see who it was. I should have gone back, but someone is like with them and then just goes back.
Kerry comes
It's
out
like-
with them.
Kerry, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
cool. I was imagining it. But he only comes out of them is really like doing it. You know, it isn't even really that, right? He just kind of appears and then he walks back. Of course, he's in the post match.
Knowing Kerry, he probably thought he was in the match and was like, "Oh, look."
It feels that way, which is the funniest part. It doesn't feel deliberate. This is chaos, and the heat for it is like otherworldly. Not a Mac classic, but you do get the Fritz von Erich double claw at one point, which is quite the sight. There's a lot packed in this one. It's short, but it's quite the spectacle. I think probably the best word for it. Bobby, what did you make of this one from Texas Stadium? This is right. Is that the official title of this great building?
Yeah.
Texas
Parade of Champions.
Yeah,
Indeed,
again,
Bobby.
like you said, not much to it in terms of a match, but the crowd is just so insanely fired up the whole time. And, to kind of see a stadium show before WWF was doing it, before anyone was really doing it, was really cool too. And, I just, it's short, but it's really fun to watch just because of the crowd and, kind of that environment, atmosphere, kind of, even the Freebirds coming out with the cops and all that stuff, like that all adds to it, man. It's not just about in ring.
Ben Dixon beat me to it here, but this is, Gordy is 23, Hayes is 25.
Yeah.
Amazingly, the Hayes one is actually more ridiculous, and that's saying something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is
He looks
wild.
45.
P.S. Hayes is done as an in-ring guy at like 31 years old. It's insane. Nonetheless, Alex, what did you make? I was really glad you picked this because this adds some real variety and we also share the ball a little bit, so it's good.
Yeah, there's this show had to be on here. If it wasn't going to be this, it was going to be the Kerry match and matches, whatever. We have the better Kerry match as far as the NWA title thing goes. The YouTube video of this match that we watched, and I'm assuming the people tuning in watched, I think is 13 minutes long.
Yep.
And I could talk about this 13 minutes for an hour, whereas I've seen hour-long matches that I could say, 5 things about. And it's like the Freebirds coming out to Bad Street, USA, Terry Gordy, my God, jeans, cowboy boots, the crop top. He's got the do-rag on, the belly kind of hanging over, just the absolute aura of that man. And Gordy we're talking about the Von Erichs, but more so than Hayes, Gordy was a staple of world-class championship wrestling. Like the singles matches he had with Kerry and specifically Kevin, if you can imagine what Gordy and Kevin, like think in your mind what that looks like, and that's what it looks like. Just two dudes beating the fuck out of each other.
Watch the Killer Khan match too. That's that might be the best match of the 80s in world class. That's not a joke.
Well, yeah, Killer Khan shows up here and Bill Mercer,
interesting call.
Yeah. Canceled. But rightfully so with the call that he has here. But all right, so the Freebirds come out. The crowd fucking hates him. They come out, Bad Street USA. And I mentioned earlier about my dad, like remembering the call for the music video. And one of the things I remember from WrestleMania 17, because I still would have been a little kid when that show happened. And when they did that gimmick battle royal, Michael P.S. Hayes comes out to Bad Street USA in that. And I remember my living room just like kind of sitting playing with my wrestling figures. And I remember because my dad never reacted. But as soon as that song hit, my dad, from reading the paper or whatever, just went, and he went, yeah, when Michael Hayes came out. And he was just so excited about it. But because that song was so memorable from this time period. And when the Von Erichs come out, the crowd, the go home Freebirds, that was always the battle cry. And then the music fades into Stranglehold and the crowd, oh, fuck. and they turn, and Mike obviously was not great at pro wrestling because he didn't want to do that. I don't know him or his family, but it seems very clear that that wasn't like what he wanted to do in his life. This is the peak of him as a wrestler because he comes out and obviously the emotion involved with his brother's tribute show, but he has so much fire and just like that's such a cool moment when they come through. Fritz tells Carrie, you got to go worry about that. He knows that Kevin's been in battle before, but he knows Mike's new to this. He puts his arm around Mike and he points at the ring, and and Fritz has his fist taped up, and he's kind of telling him this is what we're going to do. And as much tragedy that would befall and sadly define this family in the years that came after this, Mike was the next one to go, so it makes it even more sad. But like that moment to me is so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And when Mike gets the tag in here, and he's a whole house of fire, and he takes down Buddy, and but to keep with the entrances too, it's Oracle and myself, and the whole wrestling used to be good, and while that's true, when you watch something like this and the in-ring shit, this match today would still be as awesome as this is. But there is something, you can never do this type of show again where these entrances happen like this. Like Kevin in all these matches, he's getting like, and I don't mean this in like the sexual way, I just mean it in the literal definition of the word. He's just getting molested on the way to the ring. Like people are just grabbing him and touching him, and women are pulling him in and kissing him. And like here they have a couple cops and just a couple random dudes in cowboy hats walking with them, and like there's a piece of string, there's like a rope, like, oh no, you got to stay behind the rope. And it's such an incredible visual, and it like just looks amazing. And I understand that part of it. We can't do that. You can't have WrestleMania like that in a stadium where you allow people like that level of access or anything. It can't happen. And that is part of what makes this so special, and this even more so because those fans were so emotionally attached to those guys, the Von Erichs. And it just seems like they're real like celebrities. It's to a lesser extent Beatlemania. And then when we get to the ring, now this is where I can tell you, these guys could still figure out a way to do it. They just refuse to. We hit the ring. There's just an immediate, just fucking charter jet flies over Texas Stadium and drops 5,000 pounds of potatoes into the ring. Because even like Hayes, who couldn't bust a grape, he's just in there. Like they're just going nuts. Gordy gets on the outside of the ring. He starts just heaving chairs. Kevin tries to catch one, and did y'all catch that he fucked his hands up like they're bleeding? And he's just, I don't know what to do, Dad. What should I do? And so when this actually starts, it just like the aura around it, the chaos is just so unreal. And how is Fritz like? Fritz is Hulk Hogan in 1989 here. Like he just, everything he does is completely, the people are just eating out of the palm of his hand, I guess, as they say. And Mike has the fire. Fritz gets what I guess you could describe as a Fritz hot tag in 1984. He kind of comes in, and then he gets the belt out and starts whipping. Jesus came back to earth with that spot because the people just lose their fucking minds when Michael Hayes is getting whipped. For me, the match, like I was like, here we go, when Kevin Gordo get in there and face off. And I have a note here that Gordy sells for Fritz, and then in parentheses keeps this in mind because Gordy does this big stagger like Frankenstein sell when Fritz hits him. But later in the match when Fritz gets the double claw, Gordy remembers this because he takes his boot off and hits that old man in the head as hard as he possibly can with it. He just runs up from behind him and tomahawks him. It's ridiculous. Hayes does have at one point in this, it looks like he was trying to go for a sling blade, but for whoever he hit it on, like kind of like slipped or something. And so I had this incredible thought in my head of, Michael Hayes inventing the sling blade 20 years beforehand. uh, there's a spot that like I understand the principle of it, but it's just like, come on, man. Where Buddy is humping Kevin Von Erich's head because he's hitting him in the head with the belt, his big fucking belt buckle. It's just, all right, come on, because that's like the only point in the match where the crowd's just like, what is this shit?
Mm-hmm.
And then I mean, it all culminates with Fritz hitting the claw, and the crowd goes absolutely nuts, and it's so wonderful. I think even more than Kerry's victory on the same show, this was like it's the moment that kind of if you were watching it in real time, you're like, oh, okay, everything's gonna be all right. You know, this bad thing happened, and then Killer Khan comes out and Bill Mercer.
Erases any goodwill that may have emerged over the last 10
the
minutes.
video on YouTube too cuts off kind of abruptly, so it's like Bill Mercer just says all this shit that's like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Like if your racist grandpa said that at Thanksgiving, you would still be like, calm down, dude.
He keeps kind of leveling up too.
Yeah,
it's a real.
So where is this Killer Khan Oracle? When was Killer Khan and Andre's stretcher match in WWF?
I believe it was 82. No,
So this wouldn't be too far
84?
removed from that. This is when he came
84?
in as like a big heel in World Class, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because the Killer Khan Terry Gordy thing was kind of a heel versus heel feud.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to put a bow on it, just it's we say this a lot because we're fortunate in the catalog of matches that we have, but like with the emotion attached to the situation, this is like one of those matches you watch and you're like, oh yeah, this is what it can be.
So it is really triumphant. I think he did a good job of framing this the way it would have been viewed at the time. It definitely would, it's really powerful, honestly. It's just that power has kind of been repositioned somewhat for that followed, right? It's a shame, to say the least. Oracle, Texas Stadium, brother. What did you think?
Yeah. As mostly a lifelong Cowboys fan, it's kind of sad to see old Texas Stadium. It's been gone for what, 15 years now. The last time Cowboys played in it was 2008, I think.
Yep. I went to one of the last seasons. I went to a game out there. It was time for a new building. It was a bit of a dump.
Yeah.
Dak would have fit right in.
but this is just an absolutely amazing spectacle. Always loved Fritz, basically like just destroying Michael Hayes, whipping him, just murdering him with that shit.
Yeah.
My least favorite part is that piece of shit David Manning, who is just, I mean, God, that guy gets on my fucking nerves, man. Watching the Texas set, God, what an annoying piece of shit. You're not a wrestler, dude. Like, stop. Him and Sandy Barr, Art Barr's dad. Sandy Barr was referee in Portland. Of course, Sandy was a wrestler at one point, but Sandy was awful about it too. Oh my God! I watched the Buddy Rose compilation. Like, Sandy Barr was like putting himself over every fucking match. Anyways,
Nick Patrick, in like retrospect, Nick Patrick was pretty bad about it too.
He was.
Yeah, he was very unfortunate.
Yeah, he was.
One second, Oracle. Bob, do you have any other opinions on referees? Perhaps a really famous one that was.
Yes, Earl Hebner is also bad.
Just wanted to make sure.
Alarms.
Yeah, pick up where you were, Oracle. My bad.
No, you're good. Great call by Alex on the Mike Von Erich stuff. Yeah, this has got to be his best match. I mean, I've seen a few Mike matches and I don't remember the other ones. So
yeah, it's not a long list. It feels like it has to be this. And surely.
Let me get this right. Based on hearsay and secondhand, Mike didn't want to wrestle and Chris desperately did. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. And Chris was just tiny as can be. And
tiny. Yeah.
But this was just an absolute. This is probably one of the most fun matches you'll ever see. Like,
yes.
Mhm.
and when the boot comes out, and the Freebirds start using the damn boot, oh my God, they're gonna kill one of these guys.
Dude,
God Almighty!
the
And, yeah,
crowd, man.
It's
My
like-
God.
like it's one of those things of young ass Gordy's kind of firing up to Fritz. He's like, "Yeah, what do you got, old man?" But Fritz is still like, "God damn it, I'm not gonna sell that shit." So like Gordy just hits him again.
And of course, I'm a huge, I love Terry Gordy.
Oh,
obviously, because Chattanooga boy, and
Yeah.
but like, God damn, man, Terry was special too.
Absolutely.
And this gives me the chance. It's up on YouTube. I believe it still is. I believe I saw it's either his first. I believe it might be his last match. It might be his second to last. I saw maybe Terry Gordy's last match ever.
Wow.
A week before he died. He was obviously very, very much a shell of himself. But I'm always glad to say that I got to see Terry live, even when there was literally like probably 100 people in the building.
Honest to God, he would be a good future star
For sure.
Grin Grappler.
Yeah.
yeah,
He was a prodigy, man.
Get
He was
that
a total natural.
get that Miracle Violence Connection Eliminators match on here.
I'm right, brother.
yeah,
I'm right.
hell yeah. That match is fun.
Okay. Now, I think using the kind of template we did last time, clearly there's not going to be another mic match to throw out. So we'll use the end of this act to focus on Kevin Von Erich match recommendations.
Kamala,
Any
King Kong Bundy.
yeah. Anything unique or distinct to throw out that hasn't kind of been circled already?
Well, when was Oracle would be the one I would go to this. When was the Marty Jannetty accident that they had to start filming every match that they had afterwards? Where he crippled the jobber.
The jobber. Oh, gosh, that's a really good question.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm not positive.
It would have been like 89 or 90, probably, right?
Probably so.
Yeah.
The only reason I say that is because in 90, when they did a loop around Texas and they did a Saturday night's main event in Austin, Kevin got to work a few dark matches for tryouts with the World Wrestling Federation.
Mm.
And
Who did he work? Like local or?
that's the point. I don't know. Like, I just know because that's when they brought in Kerry, and when he was still, they introduced him as Kerry Von Erich, the Texas Tornado, and then eventually Vince was like, "God damn it, no." So there potentially are some Kevin Von Erich. I had that dark matches out there in the ether that would be very interesting to look up. The only other big one that comes to mind is, and this involves Kerry as well, is when Kevin and Kerry wrestled.
Gino and Chris.
They weren't Bad Company. That was Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka. I can't remember. Dynamic Duo or something.
Yep,
No,
Dynamic Duo.
Okay.
Gino and Chris Adams.
Yeah, and they
Ever
had them.
compare?
Yep, at the Cotton Bowl, and they did like a legitimate 30,000 person crowd.
Great match.
That's a spectacle. My goodness. Yeah.
Or as Mike would say, the Cotton Bowl.
That was. There we go, folks. We allowed him the Pete Dunne reference earlier. Yeah, you got to.
I've been doing good so far.
You really have. You've been very professional. All right, there we go. We move to our third and final act, which is the Kerry Von Erich act. And my goodness, did you see the new one, Alex? They're making,
dude.
That
line of it has like DiBiase and Hansen and Brody. Those, yeah, they're expensive, but those are like fucking statues models. Also,
I think they're making new TNA figures too, so you get that Moose one you were looking for.
Oh, I thought that was Bob's favorite non-WWE wrestler.
Yeah, both things can be true.
I caught Bob when we went to Collision. Bob was doing this,
Yeah.
I did forget to call out when we were talking about Fritz. Giant Graham 2000 for the Sega Dreamcast is an all Japan game that features Fritz Von Erich as one of the legends you can play as in it.
That fucking rules.
I'm not kidding. They have a sound drop of when they introduce him. They're like, Fritz Von Erich, and he puts his hand up in the claw, and they have a sound drop of him going, like in the. I just saw Ben's question, and he should be reported and blocked for that.
Well, this is a big confirm shoot thing. He's always upset about Kevin Von Erich's cage match rating, and he always uses poor Kevin Koo as his kind of benchmark. And he always,
Oh, really?
it never is someone that he's like punching up, like someone that's on TV. You know, it's always poor Kevin Koo, and he gets. How many times, Oracle, we sat here and heard poor Kevin Koo just get beaten from pillar to post about Kevin Von Erich and.
I remember when Kevin Koo won a championship, and we all clapped loudly for him when he the week after
Koo.
we had some.
I hear they've had a
disparaging
hell of a
remarks for the
year.
poor
Him
guy.
and Greeny. I hear they've had a hell of a year. So
I do like Greeny. But Ben then followed it up. It looks like Kevin wrestled primetime Brian Lee, which, my God.
oh my, All right, that's enough of that. Fool. I'm gonna
No
get one out
wonder
of the brain.
Kevin didn't get that WrestleMania 8 payday, brother.
I'm gonna say that's enough of that. I want to note here before we go any further with Kerry that when I will always be entranced by Terry Funk's story that Terry Funk could have been Drago in Rocky IV. That Kerry could have been Terry Funk's Kerry could have been Drago. He said that Sly was looking for someone, and Terry brought forward Kerry Von Erich, and apparently Kerry wasn't like interested in it, which is incredible.
I always forget about that. Just thinking of Kerry like, if he dies, he dies. You know, that's
I'm fascinated by this scenario. Like, Terry, I think it was his book where he expanded upon it. But he said like Kerry. I think he said Kerry wasn't interested, or Kerry like messed it up and missed something, or like I don't think it was a case of Stallone not picking him. I think Terry claimed it was Kerry fucking up.
I mean, we're there. We're already here. There's many versions of history that said Vince. It was down to Kerry Von Erich and Hulk Hogan as to who was gonna lead us into the rock and wrestling, brother. And
I don't know. Is that kind of folklore that you buy personally? What do you reckon?
Who's the other one? It was three people. Was it Snuka? Was the other one that people say that like?
Yeah.
Well, just pretend like you don't speak English. And like Kerry in that look, Hogan is even more so than Flair of a parody of himself that people forget like what he was capable of. And we talked about it in the Piper episode, like that war to settle the score. Like Hulk Hogan was the biggest thing like that wrestling had ever seen up until that point. And Kerry is awesome. Kerry's a mixed feelings about Kerry that we're going to get to in this third act. But yeah, as far as like the narrative of that goes, like if he really was in that train of thought, like how far could that have gone? Like
Kerry could have made a lot of money up there, but like he couldn't have been Hogan, man. That's like just not
thinking
no
about.
way.
All right, so it's WrestleMania 1, Piper and Orndorff against Mr. T and Kerry Von Erich. This right here, it's the A-Team. This is my man. This is Mr. T, and then Mr. T talking about the modern day warrior. Yeah,
he's kind of a terrifying wave too, because like, look, for all of his many faults, Hogan steered that ship he did it admirably,
brother.
You know, to the point where the boys were honestly kind of spoiled for like he was still one of the boys for that run, and to the point where when Warrior got the belt, it was an issue.
Yeah,
bless Kerry. Could you imagine what that would have done? Like, look at how he struggled with fame and star and you know kind of the star.
Look at how he struggled with wanting a cheeseburger. Like, you know, that's
brother. Imagine he's the biggest wrestling star in the history of Earth. You know, like that's a terrifying what if, legitimately. You know, like I mean, Kerry's story was sad enough. I'm saying for wrestling in general, like imagine.
Well, yeah, that's Hogan. That's the biggest thing with Hogan. That's why it worked so well, is because Hogan was very cunning, very sharp, and vindictive's not the right word, but just merciless in his pursuit to be the best. Kerry,
too.
Well, eventually, in '85, no, but yes, eventually. Famously, he would once have Eric Bischoff spend several $1 million just so he could pin someone on pay-per-view. Kerry very famously aloof. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
your point is very valid.
Nonetheless, he is a champion here as we enter our third act, May 22nd, 1984. This is 2 weeks after the aforementioned Texas Stadium show where he wins the world's title. He is 2 days here away from losing the belt, I believe was what I saw. 2 days away from losing it to Flair in Japan, dropping it back to him. This is widely considered to be like the Kerry Von Erich match. And I do think we need to establish now, because we're going to inevitably focus on Kerry because that's what we do here. This is in like an all-time great Jumbo Shooter performance. I mean, he has many, and he's an all-timer. Like that goes without saying, but he is unbelievably good here. There are like 3 different roles that he sports along the way because it's 2 out of 3 falls match, and every one of them he is just absolute perfection. So if we don't reiterate that throughout, I just want to stress that because my God, what a performance! This is quite the match. This is pretty special, Bob. How much Jumbo's Fruit have you seen? Firstly, I'm intrigued by. Is this first time?
I believe he's come up a couple other times in the context of these. I think
Funk, maybe
yeah.
Funk.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, no, I really haven't. And I've heard a lot about him, and every match that we've watched on here kind of reiterates the points that everyone says about him. He's really good. This match was no different. Especially a 2 out of 3 falls match can kind of struggle sometimes to kind of stay fresh and not just repeat the same spots. They did a really good job with that here. I think it flew by. I think it's about 30 minutes or whatever, but it breezes by, and that's really a testament to both the guys. And yeah, it was a blast, a tremendous match, and another great environment. And that was kind of the theme that we got throughout these as well, where the crowd just adds so much, and yeah, just great stuff.
The pacing, you mentioned how fast it kind of goes.
Yes.
It is paced really, really well. It's not a short match by any means. It's very much a match built on kind of struggle and grit.
Mm-hmm.
But they take a couple of different shapes throughout, man, and it really does pack a punch. Oracle, Jumbo, and Kerry here. What did you make of this, mate?
Yeah, it was just I really like this kind of in contrast to our last match with Lawler, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. But
Mm-hmm.
it was cool that we got to see, and I often think that this is probably why it is called the sort of quintessential Kerry match. Is it's him working the NWA World Title
Yeah.
match,
Yeah.
on the mat. 2 out of 3 falls, half hour long, momentum swings. He bleeds, like he's
Dude, his gas tank holds up here too, because in
Mhm.
that next match we talk about, he's looking a bit rickety
Yeah.
towards the end, but he holds up
yes,
here, man.
absolutely. Like he's this is prime Kerry right here. This was the prime of his career. So it really does just a excellent job of encapsulating what he probably, unfortunately, more so what he could have been
Yeah.
than what he
Yes.
ended up being. But I'm really glad that this match happened because it shows us how good Kerry was at his best. Just he was very much an all rounder. Like Kevin was so unique and had his sort of what's the word, aggressive, passionate style, right? David, we unfortunately never really got to see the complete form of. He was, kind of had just gotten there, and then of course he
Right.
tragically passed. And he was probably more of a traditionalist in the ring than the others.
For
But
sure.
Kerry was just so well rounded. I mean, he could brawl, he could work the mat, he could work this NWA World Title match, right? Overseas at that, and get over in Japan. Like he just a tremendously well balanced all around wrestler in the ring. And sadly, and I say this, trying not to be too harsh on it, but he really was, as Alex put it, what's the word, aloof. You know,
Hmm.
he just didn't have the passion for it, didn't have the and probably just didn't have the mind for it. That sounds so cruel, but
No, I think it's fair.
and that's not
I
even
don't think it's cruel. I
necessarily
think
insulting his intelligence. It's more just, you know what I mean?
All right.
because like for as many like fucking alpha males as try to act like they've
Mhm.
been in wrestling, and there's only been one, and that's Monty Brown. But like it's Kerry was just a jock, man.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
and
100%.
Yeah.
that's the thing of like wrestlers for the most part are not jocks. They're yeah. To your point, I don't think it's like a damning thing to say. I think Kerry was just kind of like he was like
He's kind of like and is that my mic doing that?
I'm not sure. Persevere seems to have stopped. It may have been mine because it stopped when I talked. Carry on.
Yes.
Yeah, you're good. You're
Can
good.
you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going crazy
You
again?
sound wonderful.
Okay,
The
thank
Oracle
you.
of Wrestling.
very sensual.
Thank you. Um, he's basically like and this sounds derogatory, but I don't mean it that way. He really was just like a jock dude, bro. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, man. Like he
A lot
didn't
of the
really have.
psychological touches here are from Jumbo, like kind of give it some shape,
Yeah.
Yeah. He's physical force, right? More than anything else. So
Absolutely.
yeah. I think that's why you used the right word for David. He was the more, or at least would have become more and more the traditional worker, right? Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Agree.
All right.
Agree wholeheartedly with the chat too.
Yeah, for sure. This here. Yeah. Quickly, I want to give you a chance on this Oracle. What do you think of this? Better case for best ever Jumbo or Tenru. You're a big Tenru guy, right?
Oh, I prefer Tenru much more. Jumbo could be very boring.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have like some vicious argument or whatever or between the two, but I've always been a Tenru guy. I mean, I like big lumpy bastards who hit people hard. So
Yeah.
that's
I was talking with some of the grinners before this, and like we were talking about that's kind of the take on Jumbo, right? Is that like on lesser stages he could be pretty dry to watch. On his best, he was extraordinary, but he was not always that way.
right.
Yeah.
He was also very much like a Baba disciple in the sense of like
Yeah.
big pro wrestling, whereas Tenru was just like, beat the fuck out of people, like, and what
Right.
that Japan style became like synonymous with.
Right.
Alex, we get some more handwork here, mate. Back in the Lexi bag.
Because it's Baba's disciple against
Uh-huh.
Fritz's son.
Factual.
And, I don't mean to sound like Johnny Gargano, but it's a callback to a previous match, brother. And it's well, the difference is this is good. But all right. First of all, I always forget Jumbo Tsuruta's theme song was like Jumbo Tsuruta Tonight. It was like the late night show, and
Yeah.
he's coming out and it's like with his guest Kerry Von Erich, and Kerry comes out to Eye of the Tiger and somewhere in Sarasota, Florida. Dude, what the fuck, bro? It's brother. Terry's freaking out about the situation in Japan. All right. He wears the Texas Stadium robe, in memory of David, which is a nice touch. This is where we talk about Kerry Von Erich right here. Is Kerry the best body? And there have been people that are bigger and more jacked than Kerry, but from just like a complete proportionate standpoint, the hair, the face, the shoulders, pecs, everything, Kerry Von Erich might be in his prime the best body
Yeah.
ever in wrestling.
That,
He's
that was a
definitely
beautiful.
a
That was a
contender.
beautiful man right there.
Yeah. Definitely a contender, man. No doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Absolutely.
So yeah, my note says Kerry looks unreal. Yeah, because he doesn't look like a person. But this is, and fairly, we're going to give Jumbo credit for this match. But I think this is the match that shows that Kerry did get it,
I
because
agree. Yeah.
he comes out and all the world class stuff. He would always come out with that doofy smile that he always had, and then kind of kiss the little girls in the crowd and stuff. Here he's very dialed in, and when they do like the pre-ring introductions, he's very dialed in, and the entire match he kind of the first two falls, I should say, he has that kind of low center of gravity with his hands like in that traditional wrestling stance, and he gets it. This is a match that is just what we've already said, what y'all have already said, I should say, of like just the NWA championship match through and through. The crowd, this is still in the time period where the NWA championship to that Japanese audience was the most like important thing in the world. And also, this is 1984, WrestleMania is the next year, and wrestling is about to become like a cartoon, but still in Japan, they still think the claw is like a legitimately dangerous hold.
Yep.
Excuse me, but like when he winds back for it, the first time he gets the claw on Jumbo, you can hear women screaming in the crowd like in terror. And it's not that sounds so silly now because
Right.
when someone hits their finisher, their submission hold now, everyone's just but it's one of those things that like because of Fritz and the brutality that he had with guys like Inoki and Baba specifically, like those fans of Japanese wrestling thought that hold was deadly, and they believed that this old fucker from Texas bestowed it upon his son. So like, I don't want this guy to hurt Jumbo. Get that off of him. I don't want that to happen. Jumbo takes the first after side suplex, and then the rest period. I kind of want to kick my own ass for taking this approach to it because I really just get so like when people start talking about the story of the match, but like this really does. So the first rest period, Kerry acts like a championship boxer in between rounds. That he just lost that round and he's kind of just like taking instruction and understanding and kind of just soaking it in. And all right, we got the next one coming up. And then in the course of the next fall, he gets busted open. He hits just an unbelievable drop kick at one point. Him and Kevin both had just picture perfect drop kicks. And then the match takes this weird turn where Jumbo gets Kerry in the corner and will not let off of him to the point where the crowd for a moment turns on Jumbo, where he won't stop, like in the refs, he's just punching him in the head over and over again. And the crowd is with Jumbo through the end, but for that one moment, they're like, "Dude, you don't need to do this. You can beat him, the proper way." And I know it sounds so silly talking about that way about a wrestling match, but that's the way those fans watching it thought of it. And so then Kerry finally gets the claw on him and wins the second fall. And this is where he completely changes and he doesn't let go of it. And he has to be pulled off. And now when he finally does get pulled off, he's doing the thing of get him up, let's go. Like he's pissed off. And that's the thing. This match is structured in a way of those NWA Japanese title matches. Jumbo's obviously an all-timer, but Kerry, to his credit, does his part very, very well here. And when the third fall starts, Jumbo can't get his equilibrium back and he's walking around stumbling. Joe, did you notice Kerry busts out an Ali shuffle?
Oh yeah.
He's walking around and does the Ali shuffle and then starts like peppering him with shots. And it's just a fantastic kind of story, for lack of a better term that they tell. And then it becomes Baba and Fritz again. And I did not mean to do it this way, that I was just like, holy shit, he's doing the thing where he runs his hand into the post in the corner, and then he's stomping on his foot. And it's a callback that, actually works. And yes, he does focus on the hand. I don't believe she would have been born. No, she wasn't born yet, but eventually.
I'm sure she studied the tape,
Oh, Alexa Bliss, you get to, what's that thing when you're at the PC, you get access to any wrestling tape that you want. Alexa Bliss is like, I need that Kerry and Jumbo tape.
Give me some of that old Japan.
And then in the near the closing sequence, in homage to Tenryu, or I guess a future homage, Kerry goes up for that fucking fall away elbow off the top rope.
Yeah.
And Kerry's selling here too. By the end, he's just kind of back to like, but like the 75%, first 75-80% of the match is it's so good, and it's such an indication what he could have been, because his selling and it's all very much in the realm of what this would be if it was legitimate, and it's just fantastic. I think this is, if you take time to dig just like a little bit, you will find that people recommend this match. But I don't think it's celebrated enough. I think this match deserves more credit than it actually gets. It's not a hidden gem by any means, but yeah.
I think it's because his title reign is like full of us just winning and losing it. I don't think people like register the steps. There's the 2-3 weeks in between, whatever it is, where
Yeah.
he does he defends it the next day. I was looking it up earlier. He wins it from Flair, and the next night he defends it against Goldie. Like there's a bunch of defenses across that couple of weeks. It's just in history. It's he won it, he lost it. Yeah, it's awesome, man. It really is. It's a special match for sure. Tremendous, and a kind of a glance of what could have been, as we all said. So there it is, Jumbo Saruta. All right.
Have you all ever seen when Kerry and David were in Florida as heels?
I've not. No, sounds weird.
Yeah, like David's so they both have these big feathers like on these earrings they wear, and David's wearing like a suit, but Kerry's like shirtless, and they just run down there's no athletes here as good as us, and
Oh my,
we're here
are
to
they
take
good at
over.
it?
No,
Is it good?
no. That's the thing. Like I don't even know if they wrestled any matches as heels. It was just kind of like, let's see.
I know. When Jarrett was like still trying to keep, he was running the territory, but not really. In what year was that? When Jerry had taken over? What year are we in there?
89.
89.
Yeah. There's a couple weeks of TV where they flirt with Kevin being a heel, and they had audio of it on Jeff Jarrett's podcast, and it is the weirdest shit you've ever heard. Like kind of like doing a "you people" thing, kind of.
Yes.
Because no one's there, right? It's not like they're gonna, do what you want in front of a house like that. But it's he's very bad at it, so I'm not surprised to hear about back in the day. Yeah. My goodness, fellas, where we end up on this journey. I loved the call from Oracle. This is, you said it earlier, Alex. Like this perfectly reflects where the industry is at as our journey ends. December 13th, 1988, Super Clash 3. Vern has finally brought the leagues together. It's all about the leagues. They're together. We're in Chicago, and this is one of the saddest looking buildings in the history of wrestling. Like, how many they have in there? It's like 1,500, I think, right? That. And it looks like less than that, to be quite honest.
The UIC Pavilion, which is now the Credit Union One Arena, is that the non-United Center that AEW runs when they come to Chicago?
No, because DePaul built a new arena like right on the lake, so that's where they run.
Okay.
UIC Pavilion, I don't even think TNA ran it. They ran where AEW used to run in Hoffman Estates, I think. I don't think anyone's run the UIC Pavilion since like maybe WCW did early on.
God damn.
Before the United Center, but yeah, it's been a minute.
Joe, just real quick, do you know what did happen at the UIC Pavilion?
I do not know.
WEC 40 headlined by Miguel Torres versus Takeya Mizugaki. So there you go.
Oh my God. There you go, folks. The range of trivia around here is extraordinary.
The true unification bout.
It feels like we should, before we even get into this and all that's happened, we should probably like map out what has happened in the 4 years between the last match because, and I don't even mean in like the most tragic. I just mean like the territory is, to say it's gone from hot to cold would be one of the greatest understatements in history. I mean, it's unfathomable. It just self-destructs, implodes.
So let's cover it, okay?
Okay, go for it.
So 1985 happens. WrestleMania happens. Vince, really the takeover started in 83, 84, but I mean, he's taken over,
Right.
Crockett's been bought out by Turner at this point. That's officially gone through because this is.
You're right, yeah.
Yep. This is December 13th, 88. So Turner is now the owner of Jim Crockett Promotions. Which basically leaves Vern and Texas just dead in the water and Vern was always trying to find these alliances after Vince started his expansion at Pro Wrestling USA, right? 1985.
Sure did.
I can't remember. Did Vince try to include Vern in it? And Vern was like, "Well, you can just go shove it up your ass."
That sounds like Vern. I think that's right.
Or Vern asked for 90%. Well, I'll take 90%.
Something crazy. I mean, to be fair, Vince would have fucked over Vern anyways because he's Vince. But
Yeah.
But you know what ended up happening in the end? Vern still came in and kissed the ring for that Hall of Fame introduction.
there you
Baby.
go, there you go, brother. And then he went senile and killed someone. So
Ah,
that was low. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
he wouldn't be the first wrestler to do so. To be fair.
right. But
Jesus, fuck. That was worse, what you just said. All right, carry on, Oracle.
I could not believe when I heard that story. I thought, what?
It was crazy, genuinely. Yeah.
But so at some point, I think it was the Texas merger with Memphis. That was in '88, right?
With USWA, that's
Yeah.
that was confusing me here too because they still keep calling Kerry the World Class Championship Wrestling Champion,
Yeah.
and like because
Can
I
we
would have
talk
thought
about the fact that like this is an AWA show and their champ is Lawler because Hennig was leaving, and so their
Right.
last thing they could do to draw a house was like Jerry's going to win the world title, and so they've ended up doing a promotion in which is clearly Memphis versus Texas on an AWA show in Chicago. What the fuck is happening here, man? This is insane.
well, I mean, fear not, we're gonna run down the whole card of this event too. So
I'm sure. But
yeah.
Oracle, where were you at? I'm sorry. This is just there's a lot here. It's
Oh,
weird,
no.
man.
But Mick Foley wrestles the show, by the way.
He does, yes.
But yeah, like so at some point, because this is on the AWA set. This one is because it is an AWA show, Super Clash.
But I thought, okay, and again, this is why Oracle's here. I thought this was supposed to be a super show, like it was like,
It is.
It is,
but like it's just AWA branded.
Well,
yeah, but they're the host, but it's like the whole thing is winner
correct, they're the
takes all.
host.
This is supposed to be a massive deal, man. Like
And this is
legitimately.
the one that has that picture. It's Kerry and
because
Jerry with like all the promoters around him at the
Yeah.
round table, right? Like they're the
I'm
fucking
pretty
Jedi
sure
Council.
because Jerry and you see Lawler and Kerry have matches in USWA too.
Yeah.
Okay, so then why were they still branding or using the WCCW branding?
That's
They
a great
fucking
question.
ruled.
I feel I keep thinking the actual I keep thinking
Fritz
the actual
sold the
merger was
trademark for
89.
a carton of Reds.
It may have been, yeah.
I
It
keep
must have
thinking
been. It must have been.
I keep thinking the actual merger is 89.
Yeah.
But
It must have been. But all the leagues have come together is the point.
Yes,
as Vern
Is
always
89?
dreamed.
Yeah, that's. Sorry, I'm just. This
Because
is helpful to have
89
someone like Devin to play off of.
89's the merger because that's when they pushed Eric Embry.
Yeah, and that's
Who
when
fucking
Cactus
ruled,
was
by the
working the
way.
Sportatorium, and that's eventually where Austin
Yep.
came in and was working Chris Adams
Mhm.
and shit. Yeah.
Okay. So this is Super Clash 3, and it's a thin house. They both cut like live pre-match promos for some reason. But
Now
my
this
God,
entire show is on Peacock and
Yes,
the
it
WWE
is.
Network, but like the YouTube clip, if you watch it on YouTube, because it has we got to have one match where Kerry comes out to Tom Sawyer by Rush.
By the way,
Mhm.
speaking of that, when I first saw the Iron Claw and I heard Tom Sawyer stuff, I was like,
dude,
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
awesome. That did a hell of a job of like encouraging wrestling fans that it's going to be the real deal while also looking like a good movie, right? Very,
Right.
very good. Dude, Jerry Lawler is fucking awesome in this
oh
match.
my God, he's incredible in it.
He's so good in this match. And by the end of it, the Kerry chants are rocking, and it's like, oh my God, they've kind of wrestled beyond the setting somehow. And then, of course, to finish your eyes, you go, no, this absolutely is where it belongs.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay,
I mean,
so-
yeah, go for it.
I can't remember why or what happens, but Kerry, being aloof, blades his bicep before the match.
Yes, he does.
So they have to add a spot where Lawler, as you see early in the match, slams Kerry's arm over the turnbuckle so they can lift up and show his bleeding.
The urban
remember the
legend
story of it?
is that Kerry, gimmicks were flowing freely back in those days. The urban legend is that he went ahead and taped his finger like, Abby style where the blade's poking out, and he forgot about it and had an itch on his bicep and went to scratch it and just
It looks like that's what happens.
Yeah.
The way that he's like tending to it, and
I just love that they were that Lawler was like, all right, I'm just gonna slam your bicep against the turnbuckle to make it that ruled. So they really started to throw the bombs early. It's kind of worked in reverse, right?
yeah,
So like they're throwing bombs early. Kerry does a discus punch early a couple times from near falls. It's this awesome spot where Lawler goes for the pile driver, but Kerry blocks it by doing a handstand, and Lawler doesn't realize it.
that is
And then
awesome.
like
Yeah,
there's a big pop, and then of course Kerry pile drivers Lawler. They're really doing like they worked this match smart because of with these super shows back in the late 80s, like for doing an 80s version of throwing bombs, it's probably the best way to get the crowd into it, right?
yeah, because they don't
Right.
have any actual investment. It's just
Right.
cold.
Right, exactly. And then of course Kerry bleeds, and this match becomes an absolute classic. I mean, the dude literally looks like he's wearing. I mean, it's one of those times where you can say the Crimson Mask, and it's like there's no question. Like his hair is curled up, the blood starts curling up into his hair. It's like starts hanging over his eyes. Like he's just totally crimson, just totally dark red. Lawler is incredible in this. Lawler, of course, to this day, the best punches in the history of wrestling.
100%.
And has like all sorts of variations. He starts doing like a fucking boxing jig in the middle of the ring and starts like laying in on Kerry, working on the cut, and like, oh, it's so incredible. And then Kerry, makes this big comeback, gets the claw on, and he's bleeding everywhere, and the ref keeps having to check the cut because it's a horrifying cut.
It is. It makes it believable, legitimately.
And like Lawler's doing a great job selling, but like just the spectacle of that last like 5 to 10 minutes of just Kerry just like gushing blood everywhere. He just looks and even then, obviously, like, as we mentioned, he's obviously not as in good shape, but he still looks like a badass after the match with like just covered in blood and like just what like that sort of visual with his look is just like honestly stunning to see. And Lawler is an incredible heel in this. Like
his psychology is like
was
extraordinary, man.
Just a magnificent worker.
Yeah.
I mean, Lawler's a piece of shit of a person. Incredible wrestler, one of the greatest to ever go in the ring.
We've talked about the bar chart, the scale of like bad person to good wrestler. It's just like they go hand in hand,
They do,
but he's one of those where and I don't have to say it, but he's one of those who's such a low scumbag that it's kind of me kind of like chasing the comments of like Lawler's a piece of shit, and I'm like, well, obviously
it is what it is, man. We're wrestling fans, already sold our soul.
Right, exactly.
Talking about the Von Erichs right now, so Lawler is he's so on point here, and he seems so motivated, which is incredible considering what's happening around him. The finish is he has enough blood to make the finish believable. Mm-hmm. It's just doing it in the claw is like
I know. It's awful.
And it's the kind of thing you could get away with if you were red hot and they wanted to come back next week. But brother, look at the building. Like there's got to be a time and a place to steal money from him. I mean,
the people,
and of course,
they were begging, by the end, and for what it's worth, credit to both guys. But Lawler's healing was incredible here. I mean, he made people want him, to see him get his ass
absolutely.
beaten.
Dude, his post-fight interview is so amazing. Where he's
he's awesome, dude.
I'm so glad the ref stopped it because I would have hated to take his eyesight, and I would have blinded Kerry Von Erich.
By the way, Lawler, all-time great promo back then too.
For sure. We need to note this. Ben mentions it. So famously, Jerry was not paid for this show, and so just took the belt. which created one of the greatest WWE DVD moments ever, where on the AWA DVD, like Lawler gets in the ring at Raw when it's like an empty building with the AWA belt and stands there, and they kind of use the footage like it's from like 1988. One of the weirdest editing choices ever. To be fair, the building was about as full, so nonetheless, Bobby, I know you're a big Lawler guy. What did you make of this one, mate?
Yeah, it ruled. I mean, Oracle really laid it out. I'm really glad that we included this. Glad we ended on it. The ending is kind of stupid, especially since it's a no DQ match as well. Like, I don't know. I get it, but I don't know. Just I don't want the ending to take away from the fact that it's an excellent match, though. And just kind of like you said, like they really outdid the stage they were on here, because they could have really just phoned it in and been fine, and they both just went at it, man.
Yeah. It is too, like we've all mentioned, it's an interesting watch looking at how Kerry kind of adjusted to how much it changed for him physically, right? Like he's just not what he was, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we should call out this was the one match we did where he's wrestling on literally 1 foot.
Yeah, and the story goes that Vince called the Athletic Commission right before this show to try and fuck with it, and told them that. Which, I mean, look, folks, think about this for a minute. 1988. Think of where the WWF is and how they look. Look at this show, and remind yourself that Vince was such a hater that he was like, let me fuck around with that Super Clash free bullshit they're doing down there. So, yeah, different. But nonetheless, the leagues have finally come together, Alex. What did you think?
Man, against all odds. Not the TNA pay-per-view. Oracle mentioned the discus punch, so it needs to be established. This is very important. You all know why he used the discus punch, right?
Why did he use the discus punch, Alex?
Thank you. God, we have such a good dynamic, Joe. Because, according to the Von Erich family lore, Kevin was going to the 1980 Olympics in Moscow to represent America in the discus throw. But then that dastardly Jimmy Carter boycotted the Olympics because of the issues with Russia at the time. And as Kevin would say, well, we never forgave Jimmy Carter for that. He took that away from our family. And so Kerry, if you believe that, I think he did at the time have some substantial numbers at like high school, at the high school level. Yeah. But those damn bleeding heart liberals, they cost the Von Erichs a gold medal. Now, Super Clash 3, which I have watched this show in its entirety once before on the WWE Network. What a just disaster of a television broadcast, man. Like, they boo Bill Apter in Chicago, which makes me laugh. You got Shagger Lee's fat ass on the call talking like shortly into the title unification match. He goes, "This is for the whole enchilada." That's like his.
1-800-COLLECT.
Well, Tony, I'll tell you, they're great. All right, let's just run this down. All right, so this match had 12. This show, had 12 matches. We opened the show. Chavo Guerrero, Mondo Guerrero, and Hector Guerrero defeated Cactus Jack, with Mike Davis and Tommy Lane.
Okay, we have to do it seriously. Truly wild that Chavo Jr. is a major part of this film. When you actually think about it through that is insane to think about.
But he plays he's basically for this what Afa was for the wrestler in terms of like training these guys how to do it. So God bless him.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Embry defeated Jeff Jarrett in match number 2 for the WCWA World Light Heavyweight Championship. Jimmy Valiant defeated Wayne Bloom. Iceman King Parsons, absolute standout of world class, but we're a long ways away from there. Defeated Brickhouse Brown.
Wow.
I know it's only 3 years removed, but it's so sad.
It's a lifetime. Yeah, it's a lifetime.
Wendy Richter and the Top Guns defeated Bad Company and Medusa with Diamond Dallas Page.
Wow.
Greg Gagne defeated Ronnie Garvin.
He sure did.
By count out.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
I think that this would have been when they had a few gals from Glow come in, because the Syrian terrorist defeated Bambi, Peggy Lee Leather, Lori Lynn, Brandy May, Malibu, Pocahontas, Luna Vachon, and Tina Ferrari, of course, who is Ivory, and she's one of like the co-hosts on the show. And she was a fantastic personality. No promotion got what they could have out of her. Sergeant Slaughter defeated Colonel De Beers in a boot camp match. The Samoan SWAT.
Who does a run in that slaughter match too, right?
Who?
Sheiky baby. Sheik comes down. Remember? Sheik does a run in, and at the end of the show, Vern explains how that happened, because of course, and he's like, you don't know if he came through the back door or the front.
Slots De Beers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to know, I mean, if people aren't aware, Colonel De Beers' gimmick might be the most problematic gimmick ever.
Yes.
Look it up.
Yeah.
Or don't. Yeah. Or don't. Or don't.
The Samoan SWAT team with Buddy Roberts defeats Michael Hayes and Steve Cox. Wahoo McDaniel and Manny Fernandez in an Indian strap match. Wahoo comes out on top. And then Lawler and Kerry wasn't even the main event. The main event was...
the thing. Go for it. What was the main event? This is wild what you're about to say. Go for it.
The Rock and Roll Express against Ron Fuller and Jimmy Golden.
Now, Alex, what was the finish to that match?
A double disqualification.
The one reason you wouldn't close with this is to give the people a real finish out the door. Double DQ.
Jesus.
And more people leave after this. That match is like it's a funeral. That match is even worse than the rest. But
it was like a final battle after that 6-man.
Oh no, that was a low blow. That was unnecessary.
Hey, I was there. I paid for a ticket. I get to say that.
It's Christmas, Alex. Come on, some things are sacred. Carry on. What else?
That's fair. So I would not consider Kerry's promo before this his strongest work, where his daughter's on his lap and he talks. He says the line, "There's only one world." All right, Kerry.
Factual.
Thank you. And whereas you got to Jerry, and Jerry's all topical and shit, he makes a reference about the playoffs and about how these teams, which is topical right now to us football fans.
That's a classic Lawler promo too. Like, he's always very topical with his promos.
Bob, Bears, they in contention still?
Yeah.
Dynamism there from Bobby on that one. Oh.
I guess, man, it's tough.
Hey, man, as long as the Eagles keep losing, I'm all right with it.
That's true. That's been fun.
Yeah. What do we have? Yeah, Bill Apter, Vern. I do like the winner take all graphic. I don't understand why Lawler comes out to the Rocky theme, but you do what you do, I guess. The crowd at this point, the main thing is coming into this, they already seem very unhappy with what they've seen so far. And that's the funniest part about this match is they completely win the crowd back. And then at the end of it, the crowd's like, fuck this. Kerry does say I think he says there's only one Mona Lisa. And then I'm almost positive he says there's only one Leaning Tower of Pizza. I think, yes. And he obviously in this match looks better than I will ever physically look, but going from what we did with Jumbo just 4 years before this to this, it's like brother's clearly on some hard times. And he had that horrendous accident, and for those of you who don't know, he probably would have still had 2 legs if he didn't crave a cheeseburger so bad in the middle of the night. But I've been there too, man. I could be dying, and they say if you walk you're gonna die, and then you put a number 5 from Whataburger on the other side of the room. I'm gonna take my chances. So, Kerry, we mentioned the arm, and Kerry's reaction to selling this is to strut through the middle of the ring, and the ladies in the crowd love it. So here's where it really starts going. There's a part in this. The first real bit of offense Kerry gets is he shoots Lawler off the ropes and gives him a clothesline that I cannot believe didn't knock out Jerry. He hits him so fucking hard in the head. And Jerry just flies down, and then I think Jerry probably told him calm the fuck down or something, because the next two are very like, me and Oracle playing at the pool at the Renaissance Inn, just boop, boop. And that first one though, man, Jerry had to get his bell fucking rung. Heritage Inn, not Renaissance Inn. Oracle knew what I meant. And then we got Kerry doing the Hawk no sell on the pile driver, just the beep, getting right up afterwards, and Jerry reacting to it. I did like how Kerry like went for the discus punch and hit the post. That was a really good that's one of Big Gunny's big spots now, and it has been for several years. But you go for the chop and the guy ducks. Roddy Strong was the first guy I ever saw do that, and I remember the first time I saw that, I was like, "Holy shit!"
He's a good wrestler. Roddy Strong.
You wouldn't know it if you watch television, but. And then my note just goes into pouring hot in all caps, because Kerry does do the right thing for the business and rips his forehead open. Now, I've had some fun with this match so far, but it is one of, I'm not going to say like one of the most fascinating matches of all time, but it is very interesting in the sense of it goes from, oh God, this is going to be terrible, to, oh man, these boys are cooking, to holy shit, what a brawl.
Yeah.
Like, this is awesome. And then the end happens. It's like, go fuck yourself. Like, so it goes through all this, and even Kerry, in as bad of a shape as he was here, presumably, and allegedly mentally, it's still, when that red light's on, and when it's time to dial down, he knows what to do. And Jerry gives this way more than he should, as far as like an effort standpoint. And it's a fitting note to end this journey on, in more ways than just like the Von Erichs thing, because like what we talked about, and Oracle kind of gave us the history and the context of, is like this was like the final like punch that this territory bullshit's over, man. Vince has won. Ted Turner owns a company now. Getting one of those, or else just get used to kind of driving around and collecting $500 a night. But in between all that, somewhere in this match, buried is just a hell of a brawl.
Right. And it's even more like kind of that part of it's even more striking, because both guys would do exactly what you said. Right now, Jerry obviously took longer and eventually stayed there forever, but Kerry will soon be the Texas Tornado, and so it's basically like watching a wrestling world kind of change beyond guys. And the wrestling world that was taking shape was never going to be able to recreate a story like the Von Erichs in the early 80s.
No.
Like Lawler over the past, God, at that point, 20 years in Memphis. Like, that was thing of the past then. And here they were, and it's still a tremendous match, nonetheless. So, yeah, it's quite the moment in time. It certainly is. All right, any other Kerry Von Erich matches that you'd like to share, Alex, before we wrap things up here?
Well, it's just also, we always call out like how different things are now, and how time is different in terms of how quickly it seems to move. Like, even just separate from the world class stuff, you watch this in '88 and think like Lawler slapping Andy Kaufman was 5 years before this. Like, and just how quickly things changed then. Kerry matches, he wrestles Valentine. It was during that time where the NWA, every state had a title. So I think it was like, it was in a big arena and like a packed house, and maybe the NWA Missouri title or something. I know there's the funniest part about it, which is the Von Erichs were, and also very oddly the Greg Valentine were like heralded in Japan. So the most, like, as far as YouTube goes, if you search Kerry Von Erich, Greg Valentine, the version of the match that pops up is the Japanese television broadcast of it. It was filmed in America because Baba had some appearance at that show, but they're like, oh, Kerry Von Erich, and they provide commentary over it. I can't say for certainty any of his matches in the WWF are like particularly good, but I can tell you that Survivor Series 1990, arguably the greatest babyface team in the history of Survivor Series, is the Ultimate Warrior, Kerry Von Erich, and the Road Warriors, which is, well, of course, it's the Texas Tornado and the Legion of Doom, but the whole idea of it is the Ultimate Warrior, the Modern Day Warrior,
Right.
and the Road Warriors, and that is worth seeking out. And Kerry, up until that first year in 1990 and some of 91, he still looks like a fucking star in that company, man.
For sure. Yeah.
It obviously hits a point where his problems kind of took over, but he definitely he looked the part of a WWF wrestler in a time of just insanely, like, literally big and metaphorically big people.
hmm Oracle he wanted to shout out the matches he had with Perfect in '90, which is probably the most memorable stuff he does as a singles in 1990 WWF. So yeah, those matches are kind of the highlight, I think.
Mhm.
But I think we cut. I mean, I think with these two matches, Kerry got a pretty decent shine here, right? Which felt fitting. So
Yeah.
He's honestly he's better than a lot of people say he was.
I agree. Yeah, I think because he's often remembered as the physique of the family. I think it kind of undercuts like what he was as a worker. Not that he was, obviously you see it here, right? It's a more simplistic approach, unless he's with a guy who can really shape it. But there's still an awful lot to like, nonetheless. Okay, Bobby, do you have
Yep.
any final thoughts on the Von Erich family? Anything you'd like to add? I know Alex has got quite a lot here to kind of wrap up with. So.
Real quick before we reach that,
Yes?
I have to. We've had some fun with Kerry's aloofness. I have to tell my favorite story before we move to the closing here. My favorite, like, Kerry being Kerry story is and this was towards the end of his life when things were really piling up. But he worked when Dennis Corluzzo was running those NWA shows in the Northeast with
Yeah.
what's it? Todd Gordon. They did a show where they brought in Kerry to be like the mystery partner for somebody, and the idea was going to be that Kerry came to the ring wearing a hood, and then he would get to the ring and take the hood off, and it's like, holy shit, it's Kerry Von Erich. But Kerry put his ring gear on, and when he went to the ring, he had a hood on, but he had the giant sequin robe that said Kerry on the back.
That is awesome. Tremendous. Bobby, any final thoughts before we throw it back to Alex?
No, nothing we didn't really already cover kind of in the beginning. Truly a one of a kind family in wrestling, for better or worse. And
Yeah.
this was an interesting journey in and of itself, because like we talked about at the beginning too, it was only 12 or 13 years we covered here, and that's, mostly everything.
Yeah.
It's a shame. Just on a human level, it's a shame, but like on a selfish, like wrestling fan level, it's a shame too, just based on what we saw. Like we could have gotten so much more out of all of them.
Yeah, like we definitely, obviously, the first match is the tail end of Frizz, obviously, to say the least, but the rest of it, like, we read the whole stories there in that amount of time. It's I'm very unfortunate. Alex, I know you sent me some wonderful imagery here. I don't know how you'd like to approach this. Feel free to lead me through it. Final thoughts on the Von Erichs, mate. Go for it.
Yeah, man. I sent you that picture of me. I'm 14 or 15 in front of the Sportatorium.
This one?
Yeah, that's obviously the building had seen better days at that point. And like, something to call out: the Sportatorium existed before like World Class started. Elvis played at the Dallas Sportatorium, and the thing that made it famous was the Von Erichs in wrestling and whatnot. And yeah, I guess just trying to go through my thoughts here at the end of like it's I can't really compare it to anything else. As big of a fucking wrestling nerd as I am, like I've never. I'm sure if I went to a different country or something, or the way some people are heralded in Puerto Rico or Japan, or the Hearts in Canada, or at least in Brett's mind. I'm just kidding, Brett. I love you. It's when I was in college, which that's a good starting point right here. University of North Texas. David and Kevin went there, and it's. I learned this all after I enrolled at UNT. David played basketball, and Kevin played football. I don't know if either of them graduated, so I might have that over them. But we went to UNT. Bill Mercer did the radio broadcast for the the basketball team there. Bill Mercer also was a professor at UNT. The UNT football stadium, the press box, is named the Bill Mercer press box, and he's part of the University of North Texas Athletic Hall of Fame just due to his contributions there. The Von Erichs would hold matches at the gym where I used to go watch people play volleyball and basketball and shit. And there's also on YouTube, if you're so inclined, a famous in 1999. I'm trying to remember. I think I have it pulled up here. Rusty Baker was a student at the University of North Texas, and in 1999, he, over the course of a couple of years, made a documentary on the Von Erichs. The whole thing is on YouTube now, and the interview he did with Fritz for it was the last interview of Fritz's life, and
Wow.
it's because it was a student project, so he just used like licensed music, and the clips are world class that WWF now owns. So it's not something you can really release anywhere, but he's uploaded it to YouTube. It's called Faded Glory. You can find it just Von Erichs documentary, and he's also uploaded separately that entire interview with Fritz, and so it's obviously interesting, and that's a tie I have to him right there, just from UNT. But then, like I said, with my family and the pictures I sent you, Joe, of the burial plots.
Yes.
This was back in March of 2015. We buried my grandma, and she's I'm blanking on the name of the cemetery right now, but she's buried at the same cemetery as the Von Erichs. And I don't know, funnily enough, or however you want to word it, but my mom, I didn't know that. I just knew we were going to bury my grandma. My mom was like, "Hey, I found this is the same cemetery the Von Erichs are buried at," and I was like, "Oh, really?" And she had the groundskeeper, like when her and her sisters went there to check in for the day, kind of map out, because he said it was like a popular visiting point, and he drew a map of where we need to go, and we were just able, from my grandma's plot, to walk over, and it was just kind of funny because we had the reception, and my mom's sisters and all my cousins are like, "Where y'all going?" And my mom's like, "Oh, we're gonna go. I'm gonna show Alex the Von Erichs headstones." And so it's that's kind of like a silver lining memory I have of my grandma passing, and that's and in Denton there was a local wrestling promotion I went to every Friday called XCW. That there were people there, like old timers that used to go to World Class, and this new wrestling promotion that was running every week, it gave them their fix for what they needed. And I saw Hot Stuff Hernandez and the Necro Butcher and Brian Danielson and Masada, and like these people who were somewhat names of indie wrestling wrestle there, but also like Dusty Wolf. And they would bring in just fucking oh fuck, what was, I'm blanking on the name, but they would bring in like these old timers from World Class just to like pop the attendance for the week or whatever, and they wouldn't even wrestle. They would just be there to be like, "Oh yeah, I remember the old times." And I sent you the picture. There was the pictures. There was the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame in Wichita Falls that was run by Johnny Mantell, who was friends with the Von Erich family, and so like he has display booths of like
Got the birds here, right?
yeah, there you go. It has the Freebirds entrance gear and some stuff, and some one of David's jackets, and most awesome for me, and like being the nerd that I am, he had a complete photocopied version of Fritz's, I think it's 81 booking, like his whole calendar for the year. And you could look through it, and it would have like the dates, the cards, and the money made and whatnot. And so
that's crazy, man. That is wild. Yeah.
That thing, the Hall of Fame no longer exists, sadly, but it was of all the stuff there, be it ring gear or whatever, that Fritz thing I remember spending the most time on, of like, oh my god, this is ridiculous. And it's still, it means something. It means something to, you go back to Homecoming in 2005. That was the first time That was in the American Airlines Center in Dallas, and that was the night that they switched back from Spike to USA for Raw, and it was like that big super loaded card they had. But it was the first time in several years that they had mentioned or featured anybody from the Von Erichs on the program, and they had like all the legends sitting front row, and Kevin was the last one they got to. And then they did this big segment later in the show where future NWA World Champion Rob Conway came out and he ran down the legends, and the culmination of like the segment was that, like, you know, Dusty did his punches and stuff, but then Kevin put the claw on him, and to this day, that's as loud as any reaction I've ever heard anywhere. Like I was a freshman in college, and I remember like people use that expression, you feel the ground shake. Like that's really what it was. It's just it means something different. And even if they still don't, you know, you mentioned the TNA show at the top of the hour out there in Arlington. I remember going there, and it was some abysmal match his kids had. But then like the end was Kevin came in and put the claw on somebody, and everyone is just, you know, there's 2,000 people there, but it sounded like, you know, a million people just fucking feverishly chanting along. When they did their version of War Games with MLW out in Fort Worth or something, they drew a very respectable house, with the whole selling point being like the Von Erichs were going to be there. It's just something different, and as you guys can tell, the three of you and also those listening, I have many personal attachments to them. They're just that. As long as I've been into wrestling, my family, and I don't even mean that just like my fucking parents, like I said, my family from Dallas, my grandma, I remember watching Raw or some shit with Diesel, and she's like, "Is that a Von Erich?" You know, and it was the way people thought of them, and what they represented was something. Honestly, you know, I'm not afraid to say is different than anything, and it is proper and it is fair. I know that Texas is it's yeah, so like, it annoys people, that idea that Texans be like, it's a Texas thing. And I am proud to be from Texas. I'm proud to be from specifically North Texas. But like, you know, Greg Abbott, the grid, the, you know, the guns and all that, they can shove that all up their fucking ass. What I'm talking about is something different. And the pride that some Texans have about some things, and in this case, Von Erichs, to me is very cool. And watching these all back to back to back to back to back, and you know, there's the discussion we've had, and I guess the best way to sum it up is like, at this point, and with this movie coming out, it's going to show a whole new audience and remind a lot of us the tragedy that came along with it. But like, it's really easy at this point, and I'm not saying inaccurate, to say like Fritz was a monster and he created this situation. But it's something worth considering, excuse me, to also say like that Texas Stadium show we watched. If David had passed and they learned something from it and rode out on that wave of success, then like there is something special to what they had. It's just it never got controlled in a way that it should have been. If you've never seen it, the best, I think, most real documentary about world class and the Von Erichs is Heroes of World Class. You should check that out. They have the 30 for 30, which is all right. It's like a 15-minute version of it.
Mhm.
The Dark Side of the Ring is not really that good. It does have. I'm way more comfortable with the idea of Kevin Von Erich being full of shit than someone like CM Punk, because like Kevin Von Erich deserves to be full of shit at this point in his life. It's like you've earned it. But he has that part in it where he talks about like, I wanted to go to prison, so I was going to go steal a gun. And then he talks about how he hid the gun in his pants, and then he went to walk out, and the guy who owned the gun store was just like, he said, "Love you, Kev." And I came back in and I said, "I love you too, sir." And he goes, "It was a great day for Texas." And that's the type of shit that like I understand where people can...
I just realized Alex does the Kevin teeth thing too when he
The
talks.
teeth, yeah.
Oh yeah. I just hugged that man and I thanked him. But it's I can understand where people get annoyed or kind of roll their eyes at stories like that. And at this point, I understand I'm droning on. I guess in conclusion, I would say about like that's my personal testimony. If this is your first like experience with the idea of world class or anything like that, um, there is no better comprehensive coverage of the story of the Von Erichs or World Class Championship Wrestling than the Saga the Lapsed Fan did. The lamentable tragedy of
Yeah.
World Class is like there is no dark side of the ring, and there's arguably no Iron Claw unless that comes out. So, Joe, I think I was fairly reined in there, but I appreciate you allowing me to kind of go down memory lane with a lot of that.
Also, I feel the need to show this because this is just
Oh yeah,
my goodness, incredible. I don't think Oracle and I can really add much to that. I think, this was the show that I know you were super passionate about doing. You came forward with the line. I think it's only right you have the final word when it comes to the Von Erichs for Grin Grappler's point of view. Anyway, it's a very unique ride. I think we tried our best to do it justice with the matches we covered and the way we covered it. So we hope everyone has enjoyed that. And now I guess it only makes sense to look ahead to 2024, right, fellas? Sounds good to me. Now, January is an interesting month for professional wrestling birthdays. And I'm just going to say it now that there's a pick here that I'm pretty keen on. But I'm going to introduce the candidates nonetheless. We have a movie star, to be fair, the great Dave Bautista. He's on the board. We have the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. We have some great matches there, certainly. We have Tully Blanchard, which could be a hell of an episode. We have two of Alex's favorites, two of the Four Horsemen, both Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks, or Mercedes Moné. And we have the front runner here in the Holbert HQ. We have Fit Finley. And I'm pretty keen on some Fit Finley, I gotta say. But nonetheless, Bobby, there's our list. What jumps off the page to you, mate?
Yeah, I think of those choices, I'm also most intrigued by Finley. Just because I know before he even got to WCW, he had a whole nother act that I've never seen any of. It's apparently all very good. Kind of thought you'd bring up Hardcore Holly. Shame that you didn't. But, I get it. But, yeah, go with Finley. That's my pick.
What would be the Hardcore Holly Grin Grappler? Some of the angle matches, right?
GDI match where that match fucking rules, dude. Bobby?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yep.
I'm in on this. No, we can't do Bob Holly. One day we will, when we have completed the greats, we'll do a spin-off of Grin Grappler, and we'll do 3-match episodes for some of the
called Grin Grappler.
Well, not quite, but yeah, maybe.
We'll do
Bob Holly. I think he rules, actually.
I like him too. I don't know if we could do a Grin Grappler.
The Grin Grappler minute where we just talk about one match.
Yeah, we could do YouTube shorts. Yeah, Alex, are you in on this Fit Finley agenda that I'm starting to force here, or are you?
Brother, you guys let me have this whole vanity episode, so I'm going to side, I should say, with whatever y'all want to do. I will say, if Finley's in the equation, that means we get to do a Big Daddy match. So,
my God, scary thought, but nonetheless, we'll proceed. Oracle, we can't have Regal in the archives without having Fit, right? We need to have both.
It's true. Yeah, we gotta have Finley in there.
There we go, folks. January, it'll be probably 5 or 6 weeks, right? It'll be probably the end of January. Fit Finley will be the first Grin Grappler of 2024.
Maybe Rumble week, or the week.
Yeah, we need to figure out the Rumble part. Yeah, because obviously Rumble, we're all. I don't know if you're joining us, Alex, but we're all meeting up for the official CM Punk, victory party. So, have you invited Alex to that, Oracle, or is he's kind of a hater, right?
Well, Alex's opinion on CM Punk, it's kind of like mine on Billy Corgan,
Legendary Carney at this point that it's funny. Well, Corgan's not funny now. Punk, what Punk has done is actively funny.
Yeah. Well, my point is like Smashing Pumpkins is such a great band, just incredible. and then he
Leave the
comes in
memories
here and
alone.
just embarrasses himself. Kind of like how Alex feels, because Alex is a big MMA fan, and Punk went in there and embarrassed himself.
Yeah.
You know,
He doesn't believe in the belt system,
right.
And on that note, Bobby, do you have any final words? A plug or promote, mate?
Join us Thursday evening for How the Grin Stole Christmas. Go see the Iron Claw Friday evening in theaters near you.
It's a big episode of the Grin on Thursday because not only do Bob and Oracle both have gifts they need to open live on the air, but
somehow
also
managed to arrive at my home. I don't know how the hell that happened.
yeah, and also we will be selecting the nominees for this year's Golden Grinnies, which is, I mean, the most Hook could pull off a 3-peat for best hair, which is, I mean, that's big time, right? So we'll everyone stay tuned on that front. Oracle, any final words? Any promote, push, so on and so forth?
I have a surprise for everyone on the show Thursday. Maybe are we doing a show to follow up on the Golden Grannies, or are we just doing the nominations?
We're doing we're gonna do the actual Golden Grinnies. Yeah, people vote. Yeah,
Okay.
be kind of weird if we just did nominees and left it
Right,
there.
right. So when is that Golden Grannies show?
I haven't decided yet.
Early January?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I don't think it'll be another show in December unless you want to do something specific. I don't know. I don't know what you're circling here, Oracle. I'm not sure.
Well, it's we'll discuss it after the show. We'll discuss it.
My
The
God.
tease. Okay. All right. Dude, I can't believe you're going to Fightful. That's crazy. Alex, the Contrarians. What's happening on that front, brother?
Yes, we are the contrarians.com. What is going on? Jerry Maguire episode dropping. Drop Dead Gorgeous episode dropping soon. Trying to remember we did this recently. It's because of the holidays. Just trying to get a bunch of stuff under our belt. So the Flintstones, that was it. The 94 live action Flintstones we'd recently discussed, which is a hell of a time. And then also Big Match John Cena's Suicide Squad, which I had never seen before. And, that kid may have a future for himself. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. Wow. I saw some quite colourful tweets about your Suicide Squad venture. It seems like you're won over somewhat, right?
Well, it's okay. Movies are just way too long these days. We were talking earlier about matches being too long. God, movies. I think that movie's like fucking 2 hours and 40 minutes. Fuck off. People got things to do, man.
That's the comic book average now, man. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another show for another day.
Well, it's, as I talk about all the time, a whole generation of people saw The Dark Knight and took every wrong lesson away from it. So there you go.
Yeah.
We are the contrarians.com. Facebook. Contrarian Prime on all your social media sites, and then patreon.com/Contrarian Prime. We are going to be doing Fighting with My Family for our WrestleMania bonus episode here. And, it's coming up here before too long. So
Rule Britannia, brother.
That's
Wonderful.
right. Page here.
We'll give the people this as a Christmas gift. Reluctantly. I want only your opinion on the survival of the fittest match. I don't want any Athena stray. I just want this survival of the fittest. Thank you very much, Alex. What did you think of it?
Hey man, that was the first time I ever saw Billy Starks wrestle, and I do have thoughts that we'll talk about in the after show. But the survival of the fittest, I'm trying to remember. Commander fucking sucks. Who else was in there?
He's a terrible wrestler. He's bad.
Dude, he's
Carl
trash.
Fletcher, Brian Keith, Dalton.
Oh, okay, that was the match where they did the whole the Dalton Castle thing felt very WWE-esque, very Vince McMahon-esque of like, oh, this is the person you like, we're gonna make him seem stupid and eliminate him. That being said, I understand Dalton Castle is currently held together with duct tape, so it's not like you can do much with him. But Kyle Fletcher is very tall, and bigger wrestlers, the better. I do love Brian Keith. It was fine. That whole show was the 6-man was great. I mean, it was. There's I'm not one of those people that like hates the idea of a sparsely attended show. Just get to kind of stretch out and enjoy it. And hoot and holler and yell at the ring, and everyone worked really hard. Unfortunately, Wheeler Utah had a match, but what are you going to do? It's I had a lot of fun.
The specific Wheeler shots are always tremendous. All right, on that note, folks, as Bob said, Grin Style Christmas, number 3, I believe, in that regard.
It is.
All those good things. We'll see you there on Thursday. I believe it'll be at 9 Eastern. Is that when we're going? 9 Eastern, right?
That sounds right. That's when we usually go.
Good. All right, well, that's where we'll be, folks. Keep grinning. All how. And enjoy this outro.